It being a little past 6 p.m., we'll go ahead and call to order the Winnebago County Board of Supervisors, the 2022 budget session for November 1st, 2021. The clerk has confirmed the roll, and we do have a quorum this evening. So we'll move on to the first items on the agenda, which are the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation by Supervisor Powers. If you could please all stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now the invocation by Supervisor Powers.
Good and gracious Creator, we ask for your guidance as we listen to and debate the budgetary needs of our county departments. Help us to work toward the best for the citizens of Winnebago County. We also thank you and honor all the men and women who have served our country in the military as we approach Veterans Day. Into your hands we commend your servant Dale Damo. Acknowledge, we humbly beseech you, a sheep of your own flock, a lamb of your own fold, a sinner of your own redeeming. We ask you to comfort and support all of Dale's family, especially his son, our county executive, Jonathan. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Supervisor Powers. You may be seated. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, and that's a motion to adopt this evening's agenda. For that, I'll call on Supervisor Albrecht. Supervisor Albrecht. I'll call on Vice Chair Egan for a motion to adopt this evening's agenda. Vice Chair Egan, a motion to adopt this evening's agenda. I'll call on Supervisor Finch for a motion to adopt this evening's agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt this evening's agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adopt this evening's agenda. Any discussion? We'll do a voice vote then. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That motion carries. Moving on down to the next item, and that's correspondence. For that, I'll call on Deputy Clerk Bartels.
Good evening, everyone. We have one notice of claim. It's from Peter Long for notice of unlawful retaliatory actions by Winnebago County Jail administrators.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk Bartels. Moving on down to the next item, and that's a time during each agenda in which we give an opportunity for anyone from the public to speak on any item on the agenda or any item under county jurisdiction. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak this evening? If so, just go ahead and raise your Zoom hand and we'll call on you in succession. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak this evening? I'll ask again, is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak this evening? I'll ask one more time, is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak? Seeing none, we'll close that portion of the agenda and we'll move on to the next item, which is reports from committees, commissions, and boards. Any reports from any committees, commissions, or boards from any county board supervisor? If so, go ahead and raise your Zoom hand and I'll call on you in succession. Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item. That's County Board Chairman's report. So really only just a couple things. First, I want to give you some updates in regards to the vacancies on the board, and then just go over a little bit of the process that we're going to go through for this budget. So first of all, just a reminder, we have a couple vacancies. First, we have one in District 21 in Oshkosh. We have had a number of candidates who have asked to be considered for that. We've reached out to them. We've spoken to some of them. We have additional meetings this week as well. What we intend is that we would have a recommended appointment for you for the November 16th meeting. which would mean that you would see the recommendation as the publication of the agenda next week, Tuesday, for November 16th. Similarly, in this District 8, that's from Nina, former Nicole Newhoff position. We've had a number of candidates for that position as well. We've actually had a number of good candidates for both of those vacancies, and we've reached out to those individuals. Actually, I've had an opportunity to speak to all three of those individuals, and we will once again make a recommendation for an appointment for this board to consider for our November 16th meeting as well. So you would see that on the agenda that is published next week, Tuesday as well. And then finally, if you recall, we do have a vacancy in District 16, former Supervisor Belante, who had moved out of the district. That district is in the city of Oshkosh, and we have made public. We have publicized that vacancy, and that those public notices will continue for the next couple of weeks as well. And after that, then we'll consider all candidates with the goal that we would have a candidate that we could put forward to consider for an appointment in the December meeting. Obviously, it depends on the timeline of the candidates, but that certainly would be the intent, especially given, as you all know, in April, there's an election for all positions, and an individual would need to take out papers in December. So we'll certainly do what we can based on those candidates to try to get you a recommended appointment for our December meeting. And that's the updates I wanted to give you about the vacancies. So just a really quick overview on the budget process tonight and tomorrow and what we're looking to do this week. So first of all, for those of you who were on this board last year, which is the most of you, except for a couple, we are essentially using the same process we used last year. So we will basically start with the budget reviews this evening. We'll continue and either get through all 14 that are listed on your agenda tonight, or we've put some flexibility in the agenda, knowing because we're going to set a goal of finishing up tonight by approximately 8:30. So that gives an opportunity for some individuals to be able to drive home, folks to get well rested, and so that we can continue again in the morning at 8:30. So the plan would be that we'd continue in the morning at 8:30, either wherever we leave off this evening, or if we get through all 14 tonight, well, then we would start with airport in the morning tomorrow. And then just as a reminder, in terms of amendments, I think what I will do, just to make sure, since finance is very involved, I'll call on the finance director, Vicky Fitzgerald, to just go over the amendment. Director Fitzgerald?
Thank you very much. For the amendment process, we will have amendments due to my office by 10 a.m. on Wednesday morning so that I have time to put them together. Then they will go through Corporation Council and then go to the clerk's office and will be published by 2 p.m. And then we will reconvene at 4 p.m. to go over the amendments and vote on them, and then vote on the final budget. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're muted, Shiloh.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Supervisor Powers. So that is the exact same process that we followed last year. That went quite smoothly. So our goal is to follow that exact same process this year. Please know that if you know that you already have an amendment that you want to make, you can come to finance now or anytime tomorrow so that they can start working with you to prepare that amendment, rather than, so to speak, at the last minute on Wednesday. So as soon as you know that you have an amendment, please reach out to finance so that they can begin helping you to work on that amendment language. And that's the update I wanted to give in terms of the budget process this evening and tomorrow. Any questions from anyone? Okay, wonderful. Seeing none, that'll conclude the County Board Chairman's report. So we'll move on down to resolutions and ordinances. And the one resolution to open up the budget review is resolution number 228-11-2021, adopt 2022 annual budget for Winnebago County. I'll call on Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for resolution number 228-11-2021.
Second.
Motion and a second for us to consider resolution number 228-11-2021. And that opens it up for our review and our discussions. And later on in the week, after we consider amendments, everyone's on the same page. That's when we would make a vote to adopt the amended budget. So that opens up a review now. So we will move to the presentation of our 22 annual budget. Our Executive Director, County Executive John Damel. I'll call on Executive Damel.
All right, thank you, and good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to present my first budget as county executive. First, I want to thank everybody who's reached out for support and prayers for the passing of my father, and I really appreciate it. I just want to let you know that really meant a lot to me and my family. Second, I want to really reach out and thank my budget team. The entire finance team was very helpful during my first budget. Vicki Fitzgerald, the finance director, Doug Petrasek, assistant finance director, Carol Blackmore, the budget manager, Mike Collard, human resources director, and Patty Francoeur, the IT director. These 5 people have made my first budget a great learning experience. I could not have done it without them. It's like drinking from a fire hose, but I think I managed. As my first budget, I try to leave several decision points for you. For years, Winnebago County has been planning to use general fund balance to cover budgets. The planned use of fund balance can be called a structural deficit because it is. However, in each year of planned use of fund balance, particularly in the general fund, the county has ended each year in a surplus and added millions to the general fund. We plan to use our savings account, but instead we add more to the savings. This budget does not take the allowable net new construction factor to increase the operating tax levy. The 1.15% increase would result in raising taxes by $680,000. Admittedly, I proposed a budget that uses $560,000 more in planned and undesignated fund balance than we did in 2021. It's also more than we planned in 2020. However, it is less than we planned in 2017, 2018, and 2019. So this is nothing new. In 2022, Winnebago County has to go through the strategic planning process. Part of this process, we'll be able to find areas that are causing the massive surpluses on the county books. We must assess our programs and begin to make the hard decisions. We are not out of the woods of the financial implications of COVID-19, and the economic hits keep coming. Now is not the time to raise taxes to ensure we leave millions in the bank. The impact of not using net new construction, lowering the debt levy, and increased home values is a reduction of the tax rate of 34 cents. This is the largest tax rate cut in a generation and the lowest tax rate in 35 years. The budget puts a line in the sand that we will not grow the county government's purse just because we can. Instead, I want to work with you, the board, to make decisions to begin to plan for the reduction of the planned use of fund balance. This will include a deep dive into why county government exists in the first place. A strategic plan, which has been advocated from some of you, will begin to align the goals and objectives of the county executive, the county board, departments, community, and key stakeholders. Perhaps such a goal will cause the county to build a strong 5-year fiscal plan. That is the ultimate goal. The levy limit allows for 2 types of carry forwards. This will allow for us to take the net new construction that we don't take this year if we have a supermajority vote next year. In 2005, the legislature created levy limits for the 2006 budget. In 2011, the legislature restricted levies even more. The goal was to restrict local government expenditures. The choking has resulted in other counties getting creative in new revenues and how to cut programs. Winnebago will eventually have to make these tough choices. And if we plan it and we develop those plans, we will make smart, safe choices, not instinctual ones. Should this board decide to raise taxes this year, that is absolutely your decision. You should have a robust discussion on this topic. You can plan to utilize money the taxpayers have already paid you, or you can continue to raise their taxes more and more year after year. I propose a path forward toward fiscal restraint with future tough decisions. One big component of the use of fund balance is 3.25 million, an increase of 300,000 for Parkview. This is more than half of our planned use of fund balance. I am confident that with state reimbursements and other monies coming in, we may not have to tap into this. However, Parkview is not immune to the larger issues of skilled nursing facilities. Nursing homes are immensely under reimbursed for Medicaid. The vast majority of our residents are on Medicaid. Winnebago County, similar to other counties, are going to have to take a hard look at the financial viability of our nursing home. We have a beautiful facility serving the most vulnerable population, and we need to keep it going. Parkview plans to operate in the red every year. This is not only due to designated fund balance, but to the support of local taxpayers. Winnebago County will have to find a sustainable way for us to operate our much needed nursing home. One big change in the table of organization is solid waste positions. We have included them in the table of organization. I know Supervisor Eisen will be very happy about this. The net effect in the increase and decrease of positions in the TO is a virtual wash. It is a reduction of 0.8 positions and a slight savings to the taxpayer of about $92,000. The budget is a board document. As I present my proposals, I look forward to honest and thorough debates on policy. When I ran for office, I campaigned on 4 themes: communication, collaboration, growth, and reform. This budget seeks to tackle goals in each of these ideals. Communications. Departments will be able to give you uniform memos with adequate information, hopefully more than you need to make each decision. Increased staff in my office will lead to the creation of a communications plan and get the county into the 21st century. The county has the ability now to email all employees at once, increasing work knowledge and county happenings. And I look forward to being out there, visible in our community throughout the entire county. Collaboration. We have a north-south divide and rural and urban divides that we have to work together to find ways to grow together as one county. I'm looking to create a strategic plan for the county that all of our county residents have a part in. I'm requesting small amounts of money for leadership pipeline training. We have to start building a bench. We can be more effective with local, state, and federal governments with more collaboration. Growth. When the tax base grows, we will be able to fund needed services without raising taxes. I heavily look forward to working with other economic development leaders in our county on this exact challenge. Reform. Not raising taxes was a huge approach to this. I want citizens to keep more in their pocket while the county responsibly spends down our overtaxed reserves. We can make government more efficient and accountable to the people in that process, but we can do it effectively while ensuring the services we desperately need. I am proud of this budget. I am proud of my first attempt at a county budget. It is my very first one, and I look forward to discussing it with each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Executive Damo. Now, as you all know, we'll be going through each department individually. But before we do that, just want to make sure, are there any questions in generally about the budget? Not about a specific department, because we're going to do each of those individually. But are there any general questions for Executive Damo about the budget? Just in general before we move ahead, and then we would start with district attorney. So anything from anybody? Okay, so we'll move to the first department, and that's the district attorney's budget, and that starts on page 216. Executive Damo or District Attorney Gossett, either one of you want to begin to review that budget?
I'm just going to do a quick overlay, and then I'll hand it off to the DA. Is the DA is on here?
Yes, very good.
All right, the DA came really close to target. The only thing that he was over on target, we were able to solve by not asking for a new vehicle this year. The vehicle that they have still has life in it. So other than that, they got us to target pretty good. So he came in where we wanted him.
District Attorney Gossett, anything else you want to add before we open it up for questions? Very good. So we'll open it up for questions from any county board supervisor about the district attorney's budget. If so, just go ahead and raise your Zoom hand. Okay, I don't see any hands raised in regards to the district attorney's budget. Just one last time, I want to make sure. Okay, very good.
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Fari?
thank you. I don't have that hand you keep referring to. So how would you like me to address if I wish to speak?
Sure.
I don't have a hand either.
So they'll try to work on that behind the scenes. So if that happens, when I call on for questions, it'll be okay for you to go ahead and open up your mic and just state who you are so everyone can hear, since they might not pick up on it right away, and they go ahead and ask your question. So please go ahead, Supervisor Fari.
That's all I had, sir. Thank you.
All right, very good. Supervisor Wingren, do you have a question?
Yes, sir.
Please go
Mr.
ahead.
DA, 2 years ago, we had a vigorous debate about you're starting the Connect program. And we were told it needed all kinds of money to do. Now we are told that the Connect program no longer exists in your office. I didn't get the official memo on that, although I heard, from the grapevine. I don't think that's a really good way to communicate such a momentous decision. Could you fill us in rather with what decisions have been made and why, just to keep us up to date on that, please?
So he was, Supervisor Wingren was looking for any update on the Connect program.
And I'm sorry, Supervisor Wingren, did you indicate that you had heard the Connect program was no longer operating?
Through your office. Yes.
No, that's not entirely correct, I guess. It's the Connect program is a joint venture, of course. So it includes people from my office as well as DHS and then private entities. And so it is still operating that way. I believe the plan, as we had talked about at the county board meeting, when we first decided to go forward with Connect, was to turn over primary supervision to DHS. And I believe that's what's moving forward to, is to have a DHS supervisor take the lead, and but the people going there are still going to be the same. So it will still be a combination of DHS people as well as district attorney personnel and private vendors.
At that time, you might recall there was a vigorous discussion about moving the corporation counsel's office out of the King building. And we thought there was a compromise there. Now I am told, not officially, that she is being moved into the Otter Street building, away from the courthouse. I wonder if somebody can speak to that.
Well, I can speak to that. I think that if we appropriate the 5 positions to really go after the struggles we're having with AODA in the county, I think it makes sense for corporation counsel to move. But again, making that move before we get this budget and we make sure that we have the 5 full-time positions going into this area to really help with the AODA, it really wouldn't make sense to even start that conversation first. So for me, this was making sure that we had the horse in front of the cart. Does that answer your questions?
Well, it answers them. They're, I think, very unsatisfactory answers, but it answers the question, yeah.
I think if you ask corporation counsel and you ask the DA and you ask our coroner and you asked a lot of people in AODA, they would understand the significance and the need of this. With our overdose fatality review board and the numbers that they're showing and the numbers that are rising in Winnebago County, it's a desperate need and a desperate problem we have to address. And I think all of us understand that there's going to be some unpleasantries with having to move, but if approved, we're all willing to do that for the betterment of our people.
Thank you, Supervisor Wingren. I see a couple other hands in regards to the DA's budget. First, I'll call on Supervisor Norton, followed by Supervisor Defferting. Please go ahead, Supervisor Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How many participants are there in the Connect program now? And how many were there when you first started? I guess I'm trying to get at, has this growth been going up, has it been steady? And that's what I'm asking about, if we're going to ask for 5 new positions to address this problem.
Yeah, Christian, DA, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to go first on this. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right. First of all, the way the program sits right now, it has to be referred from somebody who's in the DA's office, somebody who's looking at charges. One of the reasons that we wanted to add 5 people to this is we wanted to have a direct line from law enforcement to somebody that maybe hasn't done something enough to be charged with the crime. We don't think that we should have to wait for people to be in trouble with the law before we can help them. So we want to be able to move it upstream. We want to be able to give law enforcement the ability to directly refer people to the program so we can get them help before they're robbing or stealing from other people or getting in the situations that end up in drug court. So absolutely, we'll still be looking for the DA to refer people to help them better their lives. But we really want to open up that door and get it upstream. So that's why the 5 positions, because we really feel we could be opening up the floodgates. On that, DA, I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you. So Supervisor Norton, right now in the Connect program, what we have is we're able to move people into the programming based on how many people are able to fit into the space that we have. We currently have 25 participants in the Connect program, and we have 408, it looks like, that will be there total once the space is fully available. So while people are not able to be in that physical space, they're in different programs that are not. So the Connect space is a space that we're making available to consolidate all of these services. And so right now they're in a variety of places. The ones specifically working with the Connect personnel would be that 25. And the other participants are in other programs, which will be moved to that space once it's made available. And that should put us just over 400.
And also, are there not private organizations like Nova and such in the area that we could contract with instead of hiring 5 new people? I guess that's what I'm looking at, that, because I heard that if we hire these 5 new people, they will become permanent. And I guess that concerns me. What if the numbers aren't there in a couple of years? And why we don't contract with private entities like Nova and others in the area who run these programs already and use them to run these programs?
Yeah, so some of those are through private entities. We do have Prism is on board and contracted. Advocap is on board. Department of Workforce Development, and let's see, Family Services Corp. So there are private entities as well. What we're looking to do is primarily move the people that are involved in a lot of this programming already to this space to improve the services being provided.
Very good. Thank you, Supervisor Norton. Next, we'll call on Supervisor Defferting, followed by Supervisor Shorsey. Please go ahead, Supervisor Defferting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay, great. Yeah, and also just to piggyback on what Supervisor Norton was bringing up, I know that Reach Counseling does get involved a little bit as well as part of that. One of the other things I wanted to bring up is I know at the last county board meeting, I brought up with the sheriff the idea of restorative justice courts. And I have been in contact with you recently about that. And that's like something that is being explored more within the state of Wisconsin as a way to reduce recidivism, but it's also a way to save a lot of money for the county. If I recall correctly, I think that most restorative justice cases are cost anywhere between $1,000 to $3,000 per case, while compared to the traditional court system, it can cost anywhere between $15,000 to $20,000, perhaps even $25,000. I know that you're looking into that as well, and I just wanted to know if I would just like the district attorney just to kind of give a brief rundown of where we are in that progress and on what we're doing there.
Sure. So at this point in time, the Michael Rust at the Winnebago County Conflict Resolution Center has experience when he was in Milwaukee County with restorative justice, and he's volunteered to help us get this underway. This is one more of those programs that we plan on bringing into the Connect space once it's available. I have our data analyst and my assistant are currently going through the cases that we have to see how many cases would be right for restorative justice, and trying to identify some type of count so that we can give some numbers and start planning accordingly. So we're doing the preliminary work at this point in time, but we're very fortunate in Winnebago County to have a person who's got a great deal of experience with this as well.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Supervisor Defferning. Next, we'll call on Supervisor Shorsey, followed by Supervisor Binder. Please go ahead, Supervisor Shorsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd just like to say I do fully support expansion of our addiction services, because I'm aware that we had a waiting list for people who were seeking services. And I also have to say that Christian, in our last Judiciary Committee report, did provide us with some very good benchmark information on the Connect program. My only question here is, it sounds like, if I'm interpreting this correctly, that we are moving a lot of our addiction services to the building where the DA is located. And that's my only question about this whole direction. And I'd like, if you could illuminate things for us, that would be helpful. Instead of being connected, wherever it's done now, and expanding space there. So I'd like to know a little bit more, because I know one of the big issues with corporate counsel office is the people who have to work in the courthouse on a regular basis, and that proximity was very important to them. So if you could give us a little bit more information that justifies why it's being decided the way it is, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Sure, I can take that. One of the things, and we'll find out more of this when we get into the human service discussion on the budget, because that's where a lot of this went into. We are not removing any of the AODA services where they are. We are expanding a new program for that. So we are almost doubling in it. So these are more for people that are in trouble with the law or really close to being in trouble with the law. Maybe they got pulled over with a minor possession. And we can refer them to this. Maybe it's a family that has a loved one that they know they have it, but they don't want them to go to jail necessarily. They can call somebody to refer them for this program. So we will still be treating AODA services in our normal spot in the human service building with nothing will be removed from there. What we're doing is we're making sure that those that have the experience with drug courts, those that have the experience with this population, are going to focus almost like a specialized team for these people that are really struggling with addiction, where they're close to becoming another statistic. So we really wanted to specialize that. As far as Corporation Counsel and the talks that I've had with them, they have been supportive. They do understand the need that's out there. They understand the amount of hurt there is going on in our community. They understand exactly what we're up against. And they are willing to make the move. And this is not something that I would have done as just an order. I had to make sure that I had buy-in from Mary Ann and her team as well. So I think they understand it. And I think all of us, the DA included, Bill Topol, Mary Ann, and myself, we all know this is bigger than us. So we're willing to try whatever we can.
And Supervisor Scorsese, I think we have to go back a little bit to when we first set this up, but one of the limitations, so it's going to be in the same building as the DA's office, but not in the same space.
Right, I understand that.
Yeah, Dr. Topol.
I understand that.
Yeah.
So what accommodation are we going to make for the corporate counsel staff to make it easy for them to do their work in the courthouse and yet be basically off-site?
We have a couple possibilities we're willing to explore after the budget. First, we wanted to make sure that we weren't wasting resources and time and planning beforehand. So one of the things is to bring them over by the cab building, which is, it's always good to have your corporation counsel close to your county executive, especially when he's a new guy elected. And the other part of that is looking for a remote office still in that building over by the DA. So if they have quick cases, they can still run back and forth. And even maybe that's an office on the 5th floor of the court building itself. But yes, absolutely give them a remote office there.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Shorsey. Next speaker is Supervisor Binder. Please go ahead, Supervisor Binder.
I'd just like to comment, last year at the budget, we talked about this and corporate counsel said they needed to be in the Orton King building and that there was no way they wanted to move out of there. We spent quite a bit of money moving walls in the basement of that building to make room for the Connect program. And I can't just see us continuing to remodel these buildings every year. Hopefully whatever plan we come up with this year, it's basically going to meet the needs of everybody. We can't just continue to spend taxpayers' money remodeling a building, moving corporate counsel into the by gosh building. And next year you're going to come to the budget and you're going to tell us, well, it's not working out. She needs to be closer to the courthouse and we're going to spend money to move her somewhere else. I mean, these things have to be thought through thoroughly. In a private business, you don't do things like that. You basically think things out. And if that was the case, we should have done it last year. We should have moved her last year and we should have used the resources to remodel that building in the Orton King building for the Connect program and not be doing it again this year. I mean, we moved walls in the basement to try to make that work. And now we're going to spend more money moving corporate counsel over to the Oshkosh by Gosh building. That's truly just a waste of taxpayers' dollars. Thank you.
I'm going to speak up on that for a little bit, if I may, Chairman.
Please go ahead.
All right. This is going to use both the first floor and the basement. As far as the Connect space itself, there will be no more remodeling that has to do. This is going to help us with the influx. You heard the DA said that if we get the space, we're going to go from the 28 people to 400. And that 400 is before we even turn on the switch to allowing law enforcement to refer people there without charges. Now, you may call it a waste of taxpayer money, but in last year, we lost 37 people to overdoses alone, and that doesn't count alcohol or other things. That's just AODA. That's just overdoses from the Fatality Review Board. We are losing citizens at a higher rate to addiction than we have for COVID, and look at all the things that we've spent for that. This is just as important in our community. And that is not by any means a waste of taxpayer money to do anything we can to help these families.
I want to correct you on that, John. What I said is we need to remodel wisely. We remodeled that building last year. We should have thought this out last year and we should have remodeled so that it was good for the next 10 years, not for 7 or 8 months.
I agree.
I didn't say that we didn't need to help these people. I said we have to remodel wisely. You don't remodel your house, your kitchen, and the next year remodel your kitchen. You think wisely, you remodel it to what you need for now and in the future.
I agree.
Thank you, Supervisor Binder.
Yeah.
Seeing no other call-ins, we'll go ahead and conclude the district attorney's budget. Thank you, District Attorney Gossett. We'll move on to the clerk of courts budget. Now that one starts on page 228. Executive Dable, anything you want to comment on before we go to the clerk of courts?
I do. I just want to say that I'm really sad. This is going to be the last day of working with Melissa Pingle, and I'd like to congratulate her on her new job. I'm excited for your new adventures, and I'll be there for you if you have any questions along the way. I appreciated just how easy you were to work with on the budget. You came in directly where we wanted you to go, and Winnebago County is greatly going to miss you.
Thank you, Executive Dable. And for those of you who might not know, Melissa Pingle will be going on to be the administrator of Waushara County, actually in the future. So we certainly wish her all the best and thank her for all she's done for Winnebago County in her position. So best of luck to you. But before we do all that, we still have to finalize her budget. So Clerk of Courts, Pingle, anything you want to add in regards to Clerk of Courts budget?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay. No, nothing is super new from anything in the past. We came in under budget again, largely due to the SDC collections. Collections were down a little bit, which is laughable compared to what it used to be. Now we're about $1 million just in our interest account. I just wanted to say I enjoyed working with all of you. I've learned a ton here. I've been here almost 10 years. And I have great staff. You guys have been great. I'm taking all of this with me, and I will be following up, asking questions as I go to a smaller county, but still providing the same amount of services. So thank you for everything you have. Tara Berry is the new clerk of courts. The judges appointed her. And so she will be taking my office November 3rd. She's been with the courts. I actually hired her in 2012, the same year I started. So she's been with us. She's been in several different roles. She'll do a nice job. You guys will like her. Just wanted to throw her name out because you will be seeing that in the near future. And then does anyone have any questions for me?
Very good. Thank you. So we'll open it up for questions. I see one hand up. I'll call on Supervisor Eisen. Please go ahead, Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Melissa, could you comment on what rental eviction assistance Winnebago County has provided to residents and whether this needs to be addressed by the county executive with federal CARES and American Rescue dollars?
Well, my office doesn't handle that part. There is a, I can't remember what organization is dealing with it. We have the conflict resolution in the building that we do contract with. But as far as the knowledge that I have of who is being helped and what is out there, I can't speak to that. I'm sorry.
Well, have there been evictions that have come through the court system? And is this being addressed in any fashion by the county in its need to assist its residents? Perhaps the county executive can add to that.
Executive Damo, anything to add in regards to that?
Yeah, I think it's more of a question for human services when we get to that budget. There are some things that we've done, some things that we really tried to that we didn't have a lot of success for. It's especially hard with homeowners versus renters. Banks aren't really willing to give us the information, even though we're looking to help to keep people in their homes. So it's an at will. We have to give the banks the information. It's up to them to pass it on to the homeowners that are in trouble. But I think it's more of a question directed to Bill Topol. We are definitely looking into it. I'm not sure where the need is at the moment.
Good. Any further questions, Supervisor Eisen?
Yeah. Is there a statistic that would indicate the number of cases that have been brought to the courts that you may be familiar with?
There are some statistics that I've heard Director Topol speak on, but I'm not sure what they are at the moment, and I'm not sure if Melissa would have those.
I wouldn't. Okay.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. And perhaps when we get to the Human Services budget, Supervisor Eisen certainly can ask that question of Director Topol again as well. Very good. So we'll move on to the next speaker, and that's Supervisor Shorsey. Please go ahead. Please go ahead, Supervisor Shorsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just would add to Paul's question. We did deal with this through Finance Committee early on in COVID. And I don't remember the particulars, but we did make funds available for rental assistance and mortgage assistance. And I know we were quite surprised at how little how few requests we had for assistance. So there is some information somewhere. It's either through Vicky Fitzgerald or, maybe Dr. Topol. But the county was very active in setting things up to preempt any problems. Now, whether people access that money, we were surprised because we thought it would be a big liability, if you recall the discussion, but it ended up not being on either rent or mortgage payments.
Thank you, Supervisor Shorsey. Next speaker is Supervisor Norton, followed by Supervisor Binder. Please go ahead,
Yes,
Supervisor Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to add on to what I know, and Supervisor Lawrence can correct me, the agent that had to do with evictions to help people avoid evictions was Advocap, because the money first went to the state of Wisconsin, and the state of Wisconsin picked Advocap as the place where people would apply and they get the funds to help them with those evictions. The thing I think Supervisor Scorsese is talking about is about this time last year, we got some funds to help people to avoid being evicted from their house and not from their apartment. So I would think the best place to ask those questions would be Advocap and Lou Shear, because I know they've had some added numbers and they have the numbers, but I don't know them. So that's who I would ask for those numbers about how many people have been helped in the 3-county area. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Norton. Next speaker is Supervisor Binder. Please go ahead, Supervisor Binder.
Yes, there was $650,000 set aside for that, and they had to be current on their house payment through March 31st. And then if they got 2 payments behind, they could apply for funds so that they wouldn't basically lose their house. But we didn't have much success in people applying for it.
Thank you for that information, Supervisor Binder. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll go ahead and conclude the Clerk of Courts budget. Once again, Melissa Pingle, best of luck in your new position in Waushara County. We certainly appreciate all you've done for Winnebago County over the years. So thanks again.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
So moving on to the next budget, that's the sheriff's budget and the jail improvement fund budget. That starts on page 245. I'll first start with Executive Damel. Any comments in regards to the sheriff budget before we move to the sheriff?
Yeah, I'd like to really applaud the sheriff. He dealt with a lot of curveballs this year. We found out through the state that the funding was going to go away for state inmates. And he had the foresight to really read the writing on the wall and come to us with the last minute amendment before it got out to everybody else to remove 8 of his vacant positions and to consider closing down 2 pods to adjust for it. So he had some really hard decisions to make, and I think he did a good job finding them.
Thank you.
I'll leave it up to Sheriff.
Very good. Thank you, Executive Damel. Sheriff Motz, any comments, overview in regards to the sheriff's budget?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the biggest thing is the change in the table of organization. We eliminated 8 jail deputies, a classification associate, and a public safety records associate this year in the budget. So we went from 207 down to 197 on our table of organization. With those elimination of positions, we also eliminated the revenue associated with state inmates and ES sanctions, which basically we came out $47,000 ahead when all of that is done. It's about a $1.3 million swing both ways. To include with all those reductions, we did reduce overtime by $83,000 as well. We are looking at changes as the executive spoke to changes in funds that are available for contracting with state inmates. Although the ES sanctions will still be there, we will try as best we can to continue to contract as many inmates as we can based on our population and what's available. We did not budget for it because I don't have any history. So I am hopeful that we will be generating some revenue from that, and I'm actually confident that we will. I just don't know how much.
Thank you, Sheriff Motz. We'll open it up for questions. I see one. First, I'll call on Supervisor Powers. Please go ahead, Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank Sheriff Motts for his work and his leadership in the department. He and I have disagreed on a number of occasions about issues, most especially about telephone use for inmates and the cost to them. But I'd like to say that I have had a number of complaints from constituents about the Oshkosh Police Department refusing to answer emergency calls. And I have to remind them I'm county, not city, and they need to talk to the mayor. But I have never once had a complaint from the county about that a county deputy refuses to show up and answer emergency calls based on someone's political leanings. And I thank him and his deputies for always being there when they're needed. And that's really all I have to say. Thanks, Sheriff.
Thank you, Supervisor Powers. Next speaker is Supervisor Eisen. Please go ahead, Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff Motts, I'd like to refer to page 257 under the equipment technology heading, account object number 58003. And with this was a request for $26,000 that was zeroed out by the executive. Could you explain what this is and whether it is integral to the delivery of services from the Sheriff's Department?
Sure. That $26,000 was in our budget originally, and that was used to replace, it would have been used to replace the cameras in our detectives' interview rooms. But we used, and through committee, through judiciary, and through P&F, we used capital dollars that were left over from 2021's budget, so we could reduce our budget by that much in 2022, because these dollars had already been approved. That project is underway. The equipment is ordered and should be installed within the next month.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. Are there any other questions in regards to the Sheriff's budget or the Jail Improvement Fund?
It's like Jerry wants something.
Supervisor Finch, please go ahead. We'll go ahead and try to open up your mic for you.
You're muted, Jerry.
Supervisor Finch, if you could open up your mic.
How's that?
We can hear you now. Please go ahead,
Okay.
Supervisor Finch.
This is what I'd like to say to Sheriff. I've been on the board for a long time. And he has been very, very good to the citizens of Winnebago County, along with the Winnebago County Sheriff's Office. It's people like him that make our county good. It's good for what it stands for. And I know I'm getting off the board this term, so therefore I want John to know I highly respect him and his people on everything they've done for the citizens of Winnebago County. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Thank you.
I see one other hand up. I'll call on Supervisor Norton. Please go ahead, Supervisor Norton. And if you could open up your mic, Supervisor Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff, what do you contract for mental health services? The amount, and has that been going up or down the last few years? I'm just curious.
We contract 40 hours a week. There will be a contract that will come in front of you, an inmate healthcare contract, very shortly. And we went out for a bid, and there is a new company that is chosen that actually is much more centrally situated as we are with mental health. I mean, it is a priority for them. So I am looking forward to getting them on board. And that, like I said, that contract will be coming in front of you in November. And it's 40 hours a week, plus what we can get from our own crisis intervention, that 40 hours a week is what we actually pay for through our contract.
Thank you, Supervisor Norton. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll go ahead and conclude the sheriff's budget. Thank you very much, Sheriff Mach. Much appreciated. Moving on to the fourth budget review. That's the coroner's budget. It starts on page 268. Before we call on the coroner, I'll ask Executive Damo if he has any comments in regards to the coroner's budget. And if you could go ahead and unmute your mic, Executive Damo.
Sorry about that. Is Cheryl on?
Coroner Bramer, are you on? I believe she's on. Coroner Bramer?
While we're looking, the one thing I want to do is we are retiring on an old steed of the county. It was Sheriff Brooks's old Golden Nugget car, has been operating under the coroner's office for the last while, and I think we are finally replacing it in this budget.
Very good. We'll open it up for any questions in regards to the coroner's budget. Any county board supervisor with any questions on the coroner's budget? I don't see any hands. All right, very good. We'll conclude the coroner's budget. We'll move on to the fifth budget review this evening. That's the emergency management budget. It starts on page 280. Before we call on Director Rasmussen, Executive Damo, anything you want to comment on regards to the emergency management budget?
Yeah, there were some changes to this budget. It did come in decent. And I had originally granted the acceptance of going for a new truck. And then I looked countywide, and the truck that we have in emergency management right now is still capable for a couple of years. It is not extremely old yet, and we have some other vehicles that I think have higher priority that were in a little rougher shape. So one in land and water that also got pulled from the budget, and one in parks. So other than that, there were no major changes.
Very good. Director Rasmussen, any other comments in regards to emergency management before we open it up for questions?
I don't think I have anything major. All of our big changes were noted in the significant changes section of our budget.
Very good. We'll open it up for any questions from any county board supervisor on the emergency management budget. Seeing none, we'll close that portion. Thank you, Director Rasmussen, for being here. Much appreciated. We'll move on to the sixth departmental budget review. That's the county treasurer. And that starts on page 117. Before we ask the county treasurer to review it, Executive Damo, anything you want to comment on in regards to the county treasurer's budget?
Yeah, this was the easiest budget meeting to go through. I really appreciated it.
Very good. Thank you, Executive Damo. Before we go to questions, County Treasurer Krieger, any other comments in regards to your budget?
No comments or questions. I was able to obtain the goal that was set for me, the levy limit. So I think we are good.
Very good. We'll open it up for questions then. I see one. I'll call on Supervisor Eisen. Please go ahead, Supervisor Eisen. You can open up your mic, Supervisor Eisen.
There I go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a question for Mr. Kruger. Can you share with the board whether there were any disruptions because of the year 2020 installment tax payments deferred to October 2020? Did this
The board did pass the resolution that authorized municipalities to pass a mirror resolution. I will be happy to state that collections were pretty much on target. People were very diligent and good on paying their taxes. So the effect on us wasn't what it could have been and what we potentially thought it could be.
In other words, the large corporations didn't think out on us.
That is correct.
And wait till the last minute and save the little bit of interest that they would get.
They were good and they paid.
Okay, it's a good decision by the county board. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. Any other questions for the county treasurer's budget? I don't see any other hands, but I'm just checking. Any other county board supervisor? Any questions with the county treasurer's budget? Seeing none, we'll conclude that budget. Thank you very much, County Treasurer Krieger, for being here. Much appreciated.
You're welcome.
Very good. We'll move on to the next budget review. That's number 7, the human resources budget. It starts on page 127. Now this includes workers' compensation, property and liability, self-funded health and dental insurances. So before we go to Director Collard, Executive Damel, any comments you want to first provide about human resources budget?
Nothing in particular. Just I would like to give some credit to Mike Collard. He had a lot of work to do in this budget. There was some reductions and some additions, and I thought he did a really good job finding out how things fit, kind of reinventing some of the roles out there in the county. And we are lucky to have somebody with the experience of Director Collard in Winnebago County.
Thank you, Executive Damel. Director Collard, any other comments in regards to the human resources budget?
I would say regarding the department budget for human resources, there aren't very many major changes. One change that might not be obvious is that for 2021, we actually budgeted $20,000 to bring our compensation consultant back in and do a little bit of a tune-up or a partial checkup of our compensation plan. We didn't get time to get that done in 2021. So what I'm doing is planning to carry that amount over to 2022 and then just adding another 10,000 to it, because the 20,000 would essentially what I could fit in the budget. If we add the 10,000 for 2022, it'll let us do a slightly more thorough job with that. So that's still in the works, but now for next year. Otherwise, on the department budget, it was very straightforward. Regarding some of the other budgets, which are mainly employee benefits, workers' compensation tends to go up and down a little bit. Claims can be extremely variable. We're having trouble getting a good rate on our stop loss coverage for large claims, but otherwise, things are on course, and our experience so far this year in claims has been pretty good. On health insurance, our fund balance is quite large. We experienced a significant drop in claims due to COVID, which resulted in many people avoiding getting treatment. So we're still kind of bracing ourselves for the rebound effect of people catching up with their health needs. We're trying to be proactive about reaching out to employees. And one thing that we do have in the works, of course, the board has already voted to approve a contract with a new provider for the Three Waves Clinic, which is really going to expand our services available to employees without being deductible or copay. So I think we're very much on track there and are anticipating or planning to impose no increase in the premium that we charge county departments and county employees for their share. So it'll be great if we can keep that on an even keel for a few years. The dental program, again, is very smooth sailing in terms of the claims being fairly consistent. And we're pretty close to breaking even on the claims for dental coverage each year. And then on property and liability insurance, this is the first year I've been responsible for preparing that budget. There aren't any major changes. We are tinkering with some coverages. We're working with a slightly different set of vendors, but most of them are the same. And it's quite a job just keeping track of the property coverage, as well as making sure that the county's protected against liability claims, but no major changes in that budget. It did work out a little bit different in terms of how we allocated it among some of the different departments. So you are going to see some changes in that line for departments' budgets. Otherwise, glad to accept any questions.
Very good. Thank you, Director Collard. So we have a couple call-ins. So first I'll call on Supervisor Binder, followed by Supervisor Eisen. Please go ahead, Supervisor Binder.
Mike, would it be possible for you to mail us the rates for our insurance, like the single plus family and then the double with the family? I know I have insurance through the city and their rates went up considerably. We were paying basically $658 for a single, went up to $813. I'm just curious what our rates are and how they compare to the city of Oshkosh. So if I could get an email from you, I'd appreciate it. Thanks.
Glad to. We just sent that around to all employees for next year. So have it in front of me, but I'd be glad to email it to county board members.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Binder. Next speaker is Supervisor Eisen. Please go ahead, Supervisor Eisen.
Yeah, I guess I'm unmuted. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to refer to page 130 under the accomplishments. And item number 8, as an accomplishment, could you explain the evaluation of the alternative funded health plans? In other words, you had done some shopping for what Supervisor Binder and I had been interested in with the existing plan. And apparently you did shopping with funded health plans. Could you share with the board your experience there? And of course, that did lead you to the conclusion that we're well situated at this time.
I'd certainly be glad to. We did submit or have our consultant issue requests for proposals to health insurers to determine if we could get a good bid for a fully insured plan to compare that to what we were currently doing. We did get several bids. This was in, I believe, late summer of last year, 2020. So we were really bidding it for the 2021 coverage. So we did a thorough market survey. We had 3 or 4 serious bidders, a couple that were less competitive, and presented those bids or an analysis or summary of the bids to the Personnel and Finance Committee. We found that the best bid, the most favorable bid, would have first of all required us to bifurcate our plan into 2 plans, so that one of them was a narrow network plan. Currently have a very broad network so that employees can go to a wide choice of providers and still be in network. In network means you get a much better deal in terms of your co-pays and deductibles, of course. So we would have had to split that up, and it would be a better deal for the narrow network, but a worse deal for the people who stayed in the wide area network plan. All the plans essentially were significantly less favorable than what we're currently doing in terms of our cost and the cost to employees overall. Even the plan that had the split, it really would have come out a little bit more negative for employees because some of them would have had a narrow network, but even so, it would have been significantly more expensive for us on a total budget basis. So we didn't accept any of those bids. We elected to remain self-funded for 2021 on health coverage. And looking at the market, it hasn't gotten better, it's gotten worse. You know, a few years ago, and the city and the school district, for instance, in Oshkosh, both went to insured plans. There was some very aggressive bidding going on from the health insurance companies, and we're not seeing that nearly as aggressively anymore. They're a little bit uncertain about what claims are going to be, perhaps because of COVID. And in fact, I know the school district and I'm pretty sure the city are both going back to self-funded status for 2022. So I think we rode out the storm and ended up in better shape than either of them, frankly. And very comfortable going ahead with a self-funded plan, at least through 2022. It's something we look at and evaluate throughout the year.
Well, I do appreciate the work that you did, and you noted it in your accomplishments. And a question that I would have follow-up would be, first, I'd like to recognize that in this day and age, for the recruiting and retention of good employees, certainly a attractive and low deductible health insurance plan is a plus to that employer. Question I'd have would be, do our employees have the option for taking a much larger deductible should they choose to, and take a tax deduction under a provision such as an HSA?
We don't currently have an HSA eligible structure. We just have the one plan, which is not a high deductible plan. It's a relatively low deductible plan. And of course, to have an health reimbursement account or a health savings account system, we have to have quite a bit larger deductible. And certainly it's within our purview to add that type of plan as an employee option. We haven't done so. When we've looked at that, it's very hard to see a savings for us as the county, because what happens is, of course, the employees with a lot of claims stay in the low deductible plan, and employees with fewer claims or at less risk of having expensive health situations, they're the ones who go into the high deductible plan because they don't have or aren't as likely to have the expenses. And so you end up having to pay for make the health reimbursement account contributions for essentially the healthy employees who can really come out ahead. But the county comes out in a typical structure significantly behind because of the self-selectivity by employees choosing which plan to go in.
Okay, I'll take that under advisement, and I appreciate the explanation. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. I see one other call, and I'll call on Supervisor Schellinger. Please go ahead, Supervisor Schellinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So first, I want to congratulate you on the first accomplishment. Recruiting that many new staff in a year seems like an insurmountable number to me. Just sort of thinking about the number of work days there are. I know there's been some conversation about sort of the larger trends around employment. I'm curious during this last year when you had so many more onboardings, how did this impact the other functions that human resources would have otherwise performed, and is this sort of increase in the number of new hires something you're expecting subsequently?
Well, first of all, thank you for the comment. We're experiencing a little bit lower rate this year than last year, so it hasn't been quite as bad. It's definitely put some strain on the human resources staff. There's no question about that, and we're trying to evaluate whether how long a term problem or issue this is going to be, because we do have some trouble keeping up. We're trying to, in some cases, some departments are doing more by themselves with their own department management and a little bit less involvement from human resources on some of the, for instance, some of the recruitment of aides at Parkview, for instance. They don't get an interview with HR until after they're hired. We have a meeting with them. Some of the employee disciplinary matters, such as attendance practices and so forth, are being done a little bit more by the department management team rather than through HR. So we have had to cut back on that. We've had to streamline some of our own operations within HR a little bit, but it has been a struggle to keep up, to be honest. But for the most part, we're still giving attention where the priorities are, I feel, and when there's a serious problem, we address it, try to address it right away. Sometimes there is a delay in recruitment, in fact, because of the backlog in recruitment as well, just a general delay. We can't always post all the positions right away because reviewing job descriptions takes time. The interviewing takes time. I keep a planner so that I don't schedule anyone to do recruiting or interviewing, for instance, for more than a couple of positions in any given week among the four of us who do most of the interviews or almost all of the interviews. So that's been difficult, but things are slowing down somewhat, which isn't frankly altogether a good thing, because obviously one of the reasons things are slowing down is we're finding it harder to find good people to hire, and that's a countywide problem for us. It's certainly more severe in some areas than in others. But despite our efforts, for instance, to increase pay and really talk up the benefits of working at Parkview, we haven't seen a major change there. We're still substantially behind in recruitment. And by substantially, I mean something on the order of 25 full-time equivalents short at Parkview alone. Some other areas certainly we're having difficulty finding well-qualified candidates. There's certain human services positions where that's very difficult. Of course, you've heard from the sheriff, and recruiting for correctional officers is a huge problem nationwide, certainly not just with us. None of these problems are really just with us. They're demographic in nature, they're changing nature of the workforce. People don't stay in jobs as long as they used to. And frankly, we just have a different ratio of people wanting to have jobs compared to people who don't want to have jobs. And so there aren't as many new employees in the pipeline looking for work. So all that affects us really across the board, and something we're going to continue to struggle with, I'm afraid, for the foreseeable future.
Thanks. So I guess I'll just be kind of blunt about this. Would it help if you had more staff? Would that allow you to move through some of these hires, get positions filled faster?
To some extent, it would let us process them faster. But if the employees, if the candidates aren't there, we still can't produce them just by having more staff. So it would be of some help.
And how big of a deal are some of those, disciplinary things that you are passing off to department heads? In your opinion, sort of from I guess I'm curious from two perspectives. One, sort of from maintaining compliance with with whatever is out of line or out of order, but also in terms of our ability to support managers doing the things that they need to do, or they feel are sort of most important for them. I'm assuming they would rather be doing the primary functions of their job rather than discuss attendance and things like that. But do you see that as a problem for morale or for cohesion?
Well, I think most of those things, frankly, I think our HR department probably has historically had a larger role in some of those things than in other organizations I've seen. So most of those things, I think, are perfectly fine to be handled by departments. And we really try to prioritize that. If there's a serious disciplinary issue, we're on that. We don't put those in a backlog because there can be legal consequences. There can be operational consequences to the department that can be pretty severe if those kind of things are mishandled. But to have routine application of an attendance policy, that's pretty straightforward. And we're trying to work with department managers to make sure they understand how to handle some of those things.
Okay, thanks. I just got two more questions. In relation to your number 3 accomplishment for 2021, and the sheriff asking for sort of a supplement to that, I was just wondering if you could give your comments on what you think about a contract that was just negotiated being renegotiated at this time.
Well, I would suggest that's fine to approach the union, but I just a note of caution about the process. We can't, the county board can't, county board and county management can't unilaterally decide, to give even a pay increase to certain groups of employees within the union. So I'm just talking about the members of our Deputies Association bargaining unit who are in the union, which includes all the patrol deputies as well as the corrections deputies. So those have to be bargained. They have to be bargained in good faith. And we have done that. We have a closed contract. The contract runs through the end of 2023. So what I'd propose to do, if we wish to approach the union and look at, a selective set of pay raises, we have to respect their role in the process. They have in the past turned down suggestions on my part, on behalf of the county, that we, for instance, separate the pay scales for correctional officers from those for patrol officers. And so you may think it's all a positive, giving a raise to a certain group of employees, but we can't separate out that group to give a raise without the union buying in. And up till now, the union has been very resistant to even discuss, separating those. However, union hasn't been bad to work with. They can see reality and the difficulties in recruiting. And, so I think it may be worthwhile approaching them on that, just with a note of caution that we have to await that negotiation and make sure the union's on board before we actually, bring it to the county board, of course, to ratify and to allocate the funds for that.
Okay, thank you. And finally, I want to talk about your goal number 5 for 2022. I'm assuming that by supervisors, the new training you want to provide is for not county board supervisors, but staff supervisors. Is that correct?
Yes, supervisory employees.
And can you talk to me a little bit about, I guess what you mean by that, and if you could point me to any pieces of the budget that are going that will go to support program, new programming that we didn't already have last year.
Well, I think it really goes to the point you started out making, and that with our recruitment effort, that's one of the things that have kind of fallen by the wayside a little bit. We used to have supervisory roundtables where we would invite all the supervisory employees to some sort of a training session or a presentation on management techniques and things like that. We used to do that monthly, and we just haven't been able to get the resources together to really do that consistently the past 2 years, I would say. And so we really need to, that isn't that low a priority an item. We need to do better working with supervisors. If we promote a social worker, just to take an example, to be a social work supervisor, it's probably a great social worker, but not necessarily someone who's been trained in, how to handle problem employees or how to work with disciplinary issues or how to work with setting goals or evaluation of employees. So we do offer some training, certainly, to supervisors, old and new, but particularly new ones. But frankly, we need to upgrade our effort.
Okay. Are there any budget pieces though that go to support that?
Within the contracted services line of the department budget, there's a small item for that. I think it's this budget. That line's been typically coming down. I have $2,000 included to support that function and contracted services. The big bottleneck has really been HR staff time to set it up and arrange for it.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate all the help.
Thank you, Supervisor Schellinger. We have one other call, and I'll call on Supervisor Binder. Please go ahead, Supervisor Binder.
I was just curious, Mike, what is your feelings on, I was talking to a couple CNAs and I told them that we just raised the pay, and, I think we were paying more than they were getting, but their answer to me was, I got 16 years as a CNA, and if I transfer, I lose all my vacation. What's your opinion on a countywide lateral transfer policy? I think it would be easier to recruit highway workers, RNs, CNAs. It's like if you've got 12 or 15 years in working for a organization and to start over with no vacation, you're going to get good, qualified, trained employees, but we're going to be basically giving them 3 or 4 weeks vacation. What is your feelings on that? And I guess I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
Thank you. Sure. Our current policy allows us to negotiate a lot of those things for people coming over with experience. But there are a lot of things that come into that decision, whether to offer either a higher starting pay or more vacation. But it is something we regularly do. We do that all the time. And, the other members of the HR professional staff are coming to me pretty much on a weekly basis saying, can we pay this person more than starting pay? Can we offer more vacation? Because it's very important to try to be consistent in our practices, at least within a certain group of employees, or job class or department, if you will. So if we have someone who's been working as an economic support person for Outagamie County for 20 years and wants to move to Oshkosh or come to Oshkosh or Winnebago County and start working for us, we're not going to offer them the starting pay. We can bring them in as an ESS2 with a significantly higher starting pay and with an increased vacation benefit. That's the kind of thing we do regularly countywide. We've kind of formalized. A lot of times the problem though with doing that is we may have current employees who are paid at a lower rate, even though they may have had experience at another employer. So for instance, another example, at Parkview Health Care Center, we just changed our practices regarding hiring of nurses with experience, RNs and LPNs. And in order to accommodate that, because the demand is so great for those experienced nurses, we wanted to be able to pay them more and start them off with more vacation. But I can't offer a brand new hire, no matter how much experience, a higher rate than someone with a lot of experience already working for us has. So that was the reason, for instance, we did special pay adjustments to 8 nurses. It was really just to give me room to authorize higher starting pay for nurses with experience. So I would say we really do have essentially a lateral hire policy already, or a policy that allows us to make those kind of adjustments for lateral hires. But we do take into account the current employees and make sure we're not penalizing people who've been working for us compared to people who've been working somewhere else.
In other words, if a CNA would come, say, from another nursing home with 15 years, you would give them 3 weeks vacation if that's what they were getting, or they would start from scratch. I've never heard of a highway worker or a CNA coming to our county with any vacation. Maybe I'm not up to date on it, but I don't know of a highway worker that you hired that got any vacation other than the standard, nor do I know a CNA that ever got any vacation other than the standard.
That's probably true. We've definitely done greater pay for CNAs, but we have so many CNAs in any given year with starting vacation rate that it would be a real internal problem to hire someone from the outside in that particular job class and give them more vacation. So that's where we've not exercised our discretion to apply more vacation, because we think it would have produced more of an internal problem. We have had, a couple of years ago, we changed our vacation policy to give a little bit more vacation up front to new hires, and that's definitely had a positive impact on recruiting. But for those kind of jobs, we just haven't been able to do that because of the impact it would have on the current staff who get less vacation already.
Thanks for your opinion. That's what I was just curious about it, because I didn't believe we did that for CNAs or highway workers. And, I knew for the management staff, anything is negotiable, but for the.
Yeah, it's not just management staff, but it really does depend on the current staff we have in that area and in that job class currently.
So you wouldn't be in favor of a lateral transfer policy for everybody?
Well, we'd have to really look very carefully at the current staff in every area and probably make some adjustments and increase a lot of people's pay and increase a lot of people's vacation to give us room to bring in people.
Yeah, because the way the sheriff was asking, he would bring deputies from, Michigan or whatever, and they could have 15 years, and you could have a deputy here that's got basically 2 years, and that guy's going to get 4 weeks vacation, and the new guys that worked for us for 2 years, but it'd be the same at Parkview. We're having a heck of a time with CNAs. We're over 20 short, I believe. And if we were giving compensation for their experience at another nursing home or hospital, I think we could recruit more too. I don't know what the answer is, but I was just curious on what your opinion was on the lateral transfer policy, because if we do it for one department, I guess we should do it for all.
Thank you, Supervisor Binder. Next speaker is Supervisor Norton. Please go ahead, Supervisor Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Coward, have you ever thought about having a diversity and inclusion training for the employees, or do you have it? And if you have it, could you email me what the program is? Many corporations, private corporations do it. I work for a private employer. We don't just get an initial, but it's continual with us. And it's not just a large urban county thing. The city of Oshkosh has this. So I was just wondering if you ever thought about having that kind of training for every one of the employees in the county and not have it just individually departments doing it.
Sure, I think that is something we could think about. I'm certainly familiar with that kind of training. We do some elements of it in the training that we give all new employees. Ron Montgomery leads those training sessions, but it's probably more focused on things such as sexual harassment and treating other employees with respect in general, more so than diversity and inclusion in particular. So yeah, there's some things we address and there's some departments that do it, but something we can consider.
I mean, could you please, email me and Steve Bender, who are on that diversity affairs committee? It's an interest of mine. Like I say, I work for a private corporation, and yeah, we get the initial one, we see a video, but it's every day we get these questions that we have to answer, not just about how do we do our work, but also about that. I just think it would be something to look at. So I'd appreciate it very much. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Supervisor Norton. Seeing no other call-ins, that'll conclude the human resources budget. Thank you, Director Collard, for your time and answers to the questions. Thank you again. Moving on, thank you. Moving on to the next budget. That's the 8th budget review this evening. That's the Information Systems and Technology Replacement Fund budget. That starts on page 184. Executive Damel, any comments before we ask Director Francoeur for her thoughts?
Yeah, just a little bit. I think they did really good in their budget. One of the things we really wanted to tackle this year is accountability for hardware. Before, departments were pretty much given a blank check if they wanted a laptop or they would just get one from IS. Now we're kind of giving them a little fee that goes along with it so they can be more cognizant of it, having them pay the licensing fee from Microsoft. And what we saw with that is departments actually questioning, do we actually need this computer or is it a nice thing to have? So it definitely served its purpose, and I think it will help definitely support Patty and her mission.
Thank you, Executive Damel. Director Francoeur, any other comments in regards to your budget?
Sure. I just want to say that we came in a little bit under in our operational fund 22 as far as the levy goal number we were given. And then the technology replacement fund 23, that one we did meet our goal. However, it was increased just due to again the nature of how that account is determined based on inventory and based on licensing costs. And as Executive Damel already pointed out, that was one of our biggest changes you might have noticed with allocating the money back to the departments. And I do agree that it serves as an eye opener. It is just a big, big cost for the county related to adding equipment. So if we can slow that down, that will help.
Thank you, Director Francoeur. We'll open it up for any questions from any county board supervisor in regards to the Information Systems and Technology Replacement Fund budgets. Any questions from any county supervisor? I see one. Please go ahead, Supervisor Shorsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Patty, I'm glad to see that you have on number 9 of 2022 goals and objectives, that you'll be continuing work on specific policies and procedures. And once again, I know we've had a conversation about this, but I would add to be sure that we start developing a social media policy for the county and our employees and elected officials. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Shorsey. Next, I'll call on Supervisor Lenz. Please go ahead, Supervisor Lenz.
Thank you, Chairman Ramos. One quick question, Patty, in regards to the changing of going from licensing to subscriptions, do we feel that we have 2022 adequately budgeted? And is there any kind of foreshadowing you can give the board in regards to what future budgets might look like with many of our software providers switching over to subscriptions.
Sure. I do think it's budgeted fine for 2022. The contract or the agreement we currently have does go to 2023. But at that time, we probably will be pushed to change over to more of a cloud subscription method for licensing our software. And that just changes everything from owning something to strictly a subscription. So if we stop paying, we have nothing to work with. So that's probably the biggest factor. And then a lot of the control goes out of our hands when it's cloud-based. We'll have more dependency on our internet connection and less control if there are problems and troubleshooting to happen with the apps that are cloud-based. As far as the cost, I don't know if I can say yet what we will be looking at that as we test the first set of cloud-based applications, which will probably be our Office suite, Word, Excel, Outlook. As we test that, we can try to determine based on how much hardware we could give up. But again, we'll have other factors that are gonna be offsetting those savings as well, as far as the internet, having a second path, redundant equipment, etc. So 2022 is fine, but we'll have more information probably next year and even closer to 2023.
Thank you, Director Francoeur.
Thank you, Supervisor Lenz. Next speaker is Supervisor Borchert. Please go ahead, Supervisor Borchert.
Okay. Patty, we've talked a little bit about the fiber loop that the county owns, and they might be getting a little bit old. And I think you have something in the budget for either repairing or adding some segments to it. But I do believe that fiber loop actually saves the county quite a bit of money. Now what you're talking about with the cloud, how does this fall into place with the fiber loop and the possibility of building some redundancy in there? Is there a plan to do something like that, or hasn't that been really looked at yet? Thank you.
Yep, that's what we have in the capital improvement program. We have some engineering money first so that we can look at how we can try to construct a loop. We're at the mercy of all the utility owners, whoever owns the poles, for example, WPS or We Energies. And if it's underground, we have to know we can have a right of way down whatever roads we think would make the best path. So that money is so that we can draw something up and see how doable it is, how far we might have to go out of the way to make it happen if the correct right of ways aren't available. And then the following year in the capital improvement program, we have additional funding to actually try to do it. So that is something we're looking at for redundancy purposes. We also have this large fiber plant that is aging. We started doing stuff probably in 1999. So some of the initial stuff is getting aged out. We don't really know a life cycle of it, but if it gets damaged, there's always loss that accumulates. So we just have to keep testing our existing endpoints and making sure there's not a lot of loss. But we own this. It is a great savings compared to leasing that much connectivity, but we do have to maintain it and replace it as it gets old as well. So
thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Borchert. Seeing no other call-ins, that will conclude the Information Systems and Technology Replacement Fund budget review. So thank you very much, Director Francoeur. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to budget review number 9, the facilities and property management budget, which starts on page 201. Executive Daniel, any comments before we ask Director Elder?
Nope, we can go ahead and turn this one over to Director Elder.
Very good. Director Mike Elder, any comments you want to highlight on facilities and property management?
Our budget for next year is pretty much similar to what we've been doing over the last 20 years. We've analyzed our buildings and we've identified repairs that need to be accomplished in order to extend the life of the buildings. And we're responding to the needs of the departments the best we can to provide them the spaces that they need to carry out their work.
Very good. Thank you, Director Elder. We'll move on to questions. I see one hand raised. I'll call on Supervisor Buck. Please go ahead, Supervisor Buck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mike, for everything that you guys do in the facilities department. Conversation we've had over the last couple of years, some other counties have adopted energy efficiency policies as far as doing solar panels, different things on their county buildings. You know, it seems that these costs are continually going down. There might be some funding in the ARPA for county buildings, taxpayer funded buildings, I guess. Are you monitoring that? I know one comment that you've made in the past was, you know, we're not going to tear off a roof to do solar panels, but maybe when we redo a roof, maybe we can look at doing solar panels. Is this something that you continually look at and see a pattern here in the future at some point that maybe we follow the suit of some other counties and adopt some kind of adopt a policy towards that green energy?
If I could take that for a second first, Mike's been working with me in another company to really look at some of the sustainable things throughout the county. He did his due diligence, so he wanted to make sure that they were accredited with the state. So we're looking for some certifications for them before we can go forward. But I can tell you that Mike's heart is in the right place for this. And we've been really looking for areas in the county that we can actually do a much better job for this. And I appreciate your excitement for that. Back to you, Mike.
To expand on that, yes, we're always looking for areas that we can incorporate new energy saving investments. Right now, I have not found any grants or anything that really apply to what we can do. Most of the ones that I found have been for you get a tax break, and since we don't pay taxes, it doesn't really help us get our work done. But we do look at trying to do new things. If you all kind of remember 5, 6, 8 years ago, we installed an absorption chiller out at the jail that would work off of the waste heat from the generators. That has kind of run its course right now. We need to look for another energy source that we can run the absorption chiller off of. We do look at putting up, they've got what's called micro wind towers that you can put by the buildings. Some of the agencies I've talked to, they've not necessarily worked out the best for them. So we are always keeping our eyes out for what we can do to decrease our energy consumption.
Thank you, Supervisor Buck. Next speaker, I'll call on Supervisor Eisen. Please go ahead, Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike, could you give us an update on the courthouse exterior refinishing? This is something which I've held dear to my heart for many years, and it it was dealt with on deaf ears, and finally it's come to fruition. Could you give us an update when we can see that building shine?
Well, if you happen to go by the building during the daylight hours, on the south side of the building, basically on the Jackson Street side, you'll see that they've actually got some of the cleaning done. And it's really looking pretty good. What we have found is that unfortunately, my predecessor used a high pressure washer that kind of damaged the surface. So it's not going to look as pristine as a brand new building, but it will definitely look a lot cleaner. They are going to be working as long as they can with the temperatures, and then they will come back first thing in spring to finish off the job.
Thank you. I will look closely next time I'm near the courthouse.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. Next speaker is Supervisor Binder. Please go ahead, Supervisor Binder.
Hey, Mike, just curious, I noticed on the employees or the employment website that you always have openings. Just curious, I know the starting position for some of those are like $13.88 an hour. Do you feel that that is adequate pay? Or do you think that it would help you if that was increased?
Well, it would always help to pay people more money. It seems that kind of drives the people. But one of the things that I know people don't really take into account is the whole compensation package that we get as county employees. You know, I'm getting up there in age, and when you look at what a county pension can do for you, that sure looks good. But when you're a 22-year-old, that doesn't necessarily ring true in your head, because that's, you know, so far in the future, you don't even think about it. So, you know, working with HR and everything, we do take a look at the compensation, but we can't really price ourselves way up there because there are other intangible things that the employees don't see, but they really benefit from.
But are you getting your work done adequately? Are the buildings properly maintained? Because you constantly have openings, and in the long run, it can cost us a lot of money if the buildings aren't properly maintained.
That is, we're getting to the point where there are some areas where we need to address a little bit more, and having more staff would help us get it done.
That's my concern, is basically we let things slide and we get a big problem over something that if we are adequately staffed, we maybe could have prevented. So that was my point that I was trying to make us as a board aware of, that maybe we need to address some of these issues with Mike to make sure that we're not basically doing more harm to some of these buildings and costing us more money than if we could adequately. I mean, it's really hard when somebody sees a McDonald's, we got a big kiosk that's $15 an hour. And I realize we got a great pension system and we got health insurance, but when you can only spend the money you have in your pocket. And, you know, I just want to make sure that you're adequately staffed so you can maintain the assets of Winnebago County accordingly.
Thank you, Supervisor Binder. Next speaker is Supervisor Lautenschläger. Please go ahead, Supervisor Lautenschläger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mike, I remember you telling me on the parking lot side that the drainage, or that from that drain down the wall, that copper bluish green thing that's come down, and you said you really can't do anything about that. Is that true?
That was some of the guidance that we got from the Historic Society, because that was, it's considered character for the building. But we've been told that we can wash the outside of the building, and if some of it disappears, that'll be fine. I don't know that we're going to get rid of it all, because I think it pretty much stains the sandstone.
Yeah, because I think you remember. I remember you saying, "Well, that's kind of stained right on the stand, so we don't know if we'll be able to get that out of there." But I remember you telling me that it'd be great that if we get it out, but it kind of looks kind of dingy. But yeah, not much we can do.
Thank you, Supervisor Lautenschläger. Next speaker is Supervisor Norton, followed by Supervisor Schellinger. Please go ahead, Supervisor Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike, could you give us an update on the Parkview Training Center building?
That has been put out for bid. We've got the bids in, and the bids came in a little over budget. And I know Kara is working with her committee to work on additional funding for it.
Thank you, Supervisor Norton. Next speaker is Supervisor Schellinger, followed by Supervisor Powers. Please go ahead, Supervisor Schellinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm curious if you could just talk a little bit about the trade-off between having your team do work versus what it seems like is sometimes being contracted out if your team isn't able to get to it. Can you talk about like what do we get from one versus the other?
Well, one thing we get from having our own employees do it is they have a loyalty to the organization rather than to a contractor who is profit driven. My staff do a lot more than like if we would contract out cleaning services, my staff does not only cleaning, but they also do snow removal and grounds work. So that would be 3 contractors that we end up having to get to do the amount of work of what my people do. They are pretty cost effective. They are more driven to doing what is right for the county than minimizing costs and maximizing profits.
Thank you. Yeah, I understand that the airport has had to contract some services that had previously been provided by facilities. I'm curious if I see that the projected, your projected 2021 budget for wages is going to be significantly short of what we adopted. I'm curious if that's related to just like not being able to staff people, right? We haven't had less facilities work to do, correct?
Well, we've never done custodial work for the airport. That was always done by airport staff. I know when they built the new building, they asked if we could handle it. And right now with my custodial staff, I've got, I believe, 4 vacancies, which is 25% of my workforce. So that is not something we could pick up in the foreseeable future. We've had about 4 vacancies for the last 2 years. So that's what you're seeing in my wage and labor line item is being short. We've had some management staff that have had vacancies. We've had some other of the job classifications have some vacancies that extended for several months.
And so this seems like this seems like hard positions to go without. Can you talk about what does that do to the work that they would have done? I mean, who is cleaning the building? I guess who is managing the staff then when you have these built-in, permanent vacancies almost?
Well, it's the staff is picking up what we can do. We're working overtime where we have to keep the buildings clean.
Okay. So I mean, this seems less than optimal to me. The way that we have this set up. Do you have any recommendations on ways to support you in getting you staff that you need, the number of staff you need to be able to do these jobs?
I don't know. I'm fighting the same battle that the entire industrial world is fighting with trying to get people to apply for jobs and actually come in to work. Over the last year, we've had a number of people that we've contacted. We've had them signed up for interviews and they just don't show up. It's like they don't even call to tell us that they're not coming. I don't know what would incentivize people to do the work. It's not a glamorous job. And, if you take a look at the overall compensation for it, it's pretty well compensated for what those people would be making in the private sector. I'm at a loss. We've looked at trying to do what we can to encourage people to apply for the jobs, and we've not had much success. And talking with some of the contractors that we've talked to, they're not having any better luck at getting people to fill their positions than we are. So it's tight out there for everybody.
Do you mind if I take a shot at that? Is that all right, Kobe?
Go ahead, Executive.
Please.
One of the things that I want to say about Mike's staff is they're excellent. RJ is somebody who's been taking care of my office for quite some time. He's very thorough. He's very personal. He had lost his sister 2 weeks before, and I taped a note to my door for him, which he really appreciated. And when my father passed away, he taped a note on the door to kind of send it back. So this little thing we had. But one of the things that we can do as a county is realize that these custodians are also our coworkers. We can do a better job of setting them up. We can take the bags out of our garbage bins and have them tied up and by the door for them. There are things that we can do as employees to make our coworkers' jobs easier. There are things that we can do that's not necessarily on the arms or the shoulders or the backs of Mike's custodians. One of the things that Mike has done has gotten down to removing our waste baskets once a week. And what it does for us is to make sure that we're recycling better and we're more cognizant of the waste that we're creating. So there's definitely more of a teamwork approach that we can do within the county to help Mike. And then maybe if we do that, we can actually make it go with 4 less people and pay them more money, as long as we do this as a team effort to really appreciate our coworkers.
Thanks for sharing that story, Mr. Executive. I appreciate the answers. I'm still a little concerned that we're sort of set up in a position where, we're not going to be able to dig out of this hole, and we have 4 positions on the books that are just going to stay vacant, similar with some of those management positions. So we'll look forward to some ideas on how we can get to full employment. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Schellinger. Next, we'll go to Supervisor Powers, followed by Supervisor Ellis. Please go ahead, Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make a comment to respond to my dear friend, Supervisor Lautenschlager's comment about copper. Having lived 17 years in Michigan's copper country in the Upper Peninsula, that patina is a natural occurrence that happens with copper. It is not dingy, but seen as beautiful by many people who appreciate what copper does. And I don't think we should be trying to get rid of it. I think we could, because even if you were able to scrape it all the way down, as more rain and so on comes, that green patina will come back. And just a reminder, the Statue of Liberty also is covered in that green patina. It wasn't always green, but that's what happens when copper is left to the outside rain and snow and sleet and hail. And let's keep it. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Powers. Next speaker is Supervisor Ellis. Please go ahead, Supervisor Ellis.
Thank you, Chairman. Mike, I just got a question here. I see that Parks usually hires people in the summertime. I know we're going through the winter first, but would that help you to get some people, as long as you can't get full-time employees, is to hire some people in the summertime, in the summertime, probably college kids or something like that, and get some of the work done that needs to be done that gets passed up?
We do, all the departments ask for seasonal help during the summer. Parks, myself, facilities, airport, highways. I do know that we had 1 seasonal that actually came to work for us this summer out of 5 that we were looking for. And that individual, we actually are having him work part-time during the school year now, when he doesn't have class at UWO. So he's helping us through the year until we get to the limit of where we can't have him work for us anymore.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Ellis. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll go ahead and conclude the Facilities and Property Management budget. Thank you, Director Elder, for your time and for all your information and answers. Much appreciated.
You're welcome.
We'll move to the next budget, and that's the County Executive's budget. Executive Damel? That starts on page 79 for reference. And Executive Damel, if you could go ahead and open up your mic. It looks like it's muted.
There you go. Thank you. Yeah, we do have some changes that we're going through here. Some changes that I'm asking for. I'm asking for a new position of a policy director, and I kind of wanted to explain that a little bit. A policy director is pretty much just somebody who's there as an assistant to me to help me get my daily operations and policy done. There's a clear separation of power. I am still the one that is making all the decisions. It's just somebody to help me carry it out. As you know, there are over 20 department heads to manage, and I'm responsible for the operations, the daily operations of all these departments and working with our department heads. So it's really just I'm ready to have debate over why we need a policy director and why not. I do have a slideshow presentation that I'd like to do if I could figure out how to share the screen, if that is okay. Oh. How's that? Is that there?
No, we can't see it yet.
How about that?
Yes, we can see it now.
You can see that, okay. All right, so just a presentation that I'm going to go through as far as the staffing levels. Simplified duties. So the county executive, it'll still be developing mission, vision, and values with you, the county board, still developing priorities and strategic plan with the county board, still engaging with citizen and community and businesses throughout the county, and duties as prescribed in the statute. The policy director is more to help with government affairs, to help us out with the contacts with the local governments and the state governments and even the federal government. More to help us out with those community relations, so we're aligning our goals together. It's more for the project management to help to dig deep for details or any kind of data that you would need or I would need for a specific policy that we're looking to have a decision on. It's really more of the office manager to help me on task and to approve follow-up. One of the complaints that I heard is it took a lot for the county executive to get back to people, and they didn't really feel like they were getting a lot of help out of the office. So it's really for us to do that and to help with board relations. I want to be a county executive office that is contacted from board members as well, to reach out, to use me as a resource for you to help some of the policies that you guys want to get enacted in the county. And on top of that, an executive assistant really is for constituent services and the clerical work of the office, scheduling, the timekeeper of the county executive, if you would. So as county executive, my roles, of course, I'm the elected official of the county, the chief elected official of the county. I lead the operational functions of the county. I develop priorities for the county mission, vision, and values and strategic plan. I set agenda and goals for my department heads. I maintain department head supervision through the annual reviews and regular meetings and help them with goals. Economic development is something we really need to focus on. I think we're missing the ball on that quite a bit. To be that community ambassador, to make sure that our GO EDCs and our chambers and even the Fox Cities chambers are all working together, as well as those areas out in the rural area that need help with that. And also appointing the authority of other duties prescribed by the statute, and appointing people on boards and some commissions. The policy director really these are some of the other counties that have something like it. Chiefs of staff, Milwaukee or Dana or Waukesha, Racine, Kenosha, and Washington. Policy director is a lower level than a chief of staff. There's some deputy executives. Again, this is a lower level of a deputy executive. And they're found in administrative counties like Brown, Rock, and Marathon. There was a similar role in Outagamie that got actually moved as the director of the board of relations. So they took that position from the executive office and they moved it to the board as a function of the board. A similar role exists in the Director of Administration in Fond du Lac. However, El Beagle and Fond du Lac is paying their Director of Administration a lot more than I'm asking, and actually more than the executive makes himself. The idea of a policy director is help to implement the mission, the vision, the values adopted by the board and the executive to achieve the goals set by elected officials. So it's really as a resource, not just for myself, but as you as well. It really helps me up to be able to get out of the office to really talk to our employees and talk to our shareholders in the community. A policy director would assist with the government and community affairs, and it helps us to stay up to date on government trends and organizational managements. Now, I am doing a lot of reading daily, but there is a lot of information out there and another set of eyes out there to really help me figure this out would be crucial. Let's see, policy director also leading the communication efforts. Now, I know some of you know that I was looking for a communication specialist before, and we talked in IS about how we get somebody to kind of help us out with that mission and getting our voice out there. We have a little bit of extra wiggle room in our budget here to potentially pay interns. We would like to collaborate with colleges and techs to get people interns so they can get some credit and some experience in county government at our level. They have these people to really kind of develop that and do those things with us and with the IS department under our guidance. Citizens, especially those under 40, are consuming news and information online and social media. They are no longer picking up papers or magazines. So this is one of the things that I think would help us with that. And we can do that without actually a budget position for somebody on the full-time salary. And I think an intern would do a really good job at that. Executive assistant, to go back to it, executive assistants are not really deputies of a department. Their specialty is to make sure that they're keeping the office running on time. And these are statutorily required, but it is more of a secretarial design, not assisting with helping policy and getting things accomplished at the county. Here's some of the other staff budgets for counties around us. Proposed here is $375,000. Kenosha's at $462,000. Outagamie is a little trickier. They're $305,000 in their executive office, but they also have some full-time positions that work directly for their board as staff for them. So if you look at that together, it's $651,000. Washington County is over $562,000. Rock County is over $609,000. The Fond du Lac's up there with similar functions. I'm not asking for that much. Out of the counties by the numbers, there are 12 county executive counties out there. 9 of them have 2 or more staff. 6 have 3 or more. 1 has a deputy executive. 1 moved a similar position to finance, and that would be Outagamie. And then 2 have 1 staff, including us. Let's see. This is not. Well, that is going to be it for this. And just going to go back to a plea here. There are many times where county executives have gone for more staff in their office. One of them was Paul Stevenson after the Arthur Young report came out, requesting that we needed more staff, and that was turned down. But once upon a time, Jack wanted to bring on a policy or a political affairs person for the executive role. And back then, everybody thought that person was going to be Ron Montgomery. And the position was not approved at the time because they thought Ron Montgomery was going to be that person. Ron has told me since that he was never interested in that position. It was never going to be him. But I think he would have made a heck of a spokesperson for Winnebago County. I think we missed an opportunity there. What I'm asking for is nothing really new, and it's not groundbreaking. I'm just trying to get us caught up to the times. Other than that, I did ask for a little bit more of travel budget. because I'm expecting to go with department heads to really to get out there to make sure that we are going to WCA, make sure that we're going with you to NACO conferences, to make sure that we are showing up with you guys to be a support. I want to be able to do things with my supervisors side by side.
Thank you, Executive Damo. We'll open it up for questions. I see one call. I'll call on Supervisor Powers. Please go ahead, Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In response to this notion about someone else taking over board relations, is that us? Does that mean you don't want to deal with us for some reason? I have like a couple of questions that I'll give you a chance to answer all of them, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. And then the communications director, I've heard some supervisors, as well as not a few constituents, who have said that they thought the role of the communications director was actually as a spin doctor tasked with presenting you personally and not the county. And hearing the complaint from others that the county executive is treating a six-figure salary as a part-time job and continue to work in the business that he owns. And I want to say, in response to a comment that someone made, a member of the community made at our last meeting, whatever the heck car you drive to a meeting should be nobody's business. And if he didn't like it, then he needs to figure out how to buy you a car. And I don't think that any of us need that. But I just want to say that's what you drive is nobody's business, except maybe if you're presenting yourself as the county executive in a parade and driving around your business-owned vehicle. And I think that's all I want to say. And I'll be quiet so you can answer.
All right. You might have to remind me of a couple of those points, but I'm going to start off with the communications director, if that's okay. The communications director was never for me. It was never about me. It was for the county as a whole. We need to make sure that we have a voice so that all our departments can have the same voice. Right now, if the Register of Deeds has something we have to get out to the public, they don't have the same carry as our sheriff's department, which has a great social media platform. It was never going to be about the county executive or what I'm doing. It's for the county as a whole. It's to really help us with our website and with how we get our mission out there. I think the health department has done a good job, but they had to build that up in the middle of a pandemic. We should have had a platform built over years. It takes a long time to build that up. The other thing about me having to bring somebody in here to do this job so that I can run my restaurant is a really insulting rumor. I have been completely neglecting my restaurant to the point where I don't know if it's going to make it, because this job is more important. I've been doing this job 50 hours plus a week and then going to my restaurant and working 12 to 14 hours over the weekends. And I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted doing that, trying to keep it together. So to think that I'm doing this part-time is absolutely ridiculous. But there is so much work to be done. Even if I gave this 70 hours of my time, I would still be behind with the amount of work there is to do, the amount of collaboration that we have to do. And as far as board relations, absolutely not. Like I want nothing more than to continue to work with you. And I've had a great relationship with a few of you that I call up and talk to from time to time. I think Chairman Ramos and me have a great relationship that we work on together. And that's exactly it, to help with those board relations. So you guys, if I'm not there, you could come in, you could talk to whoever the policy director is, and we can work on getting your policies done correctly and the best ways to go about it. I want to be a resource for the board. This is not a you versus me. It is how we work together. Was there something I missed there? Oh, you're muted.
You're muted, Supervisor Powers.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I think I hit the wrong button. I'm still, I appreciate everything you said. You answered everything I said. And I just want to say again, I stand behind you about whatever flipping automobile you're driving. No one is paying attention in a dark parking lot. And I was surprised and shocked at the comment at the last meeting. But I was out of state. I was dealing with my family, my childhood home, trying to get on the market. I didn't have a chance to talk to other supervisors, but I can't imagine that there were many of us, or if any, who agreed you had no right to drive your company-owned car. That's, I'm sorry. It just flabbergasted me, shocked me, and I found it very insulting.
I do want to say that there is merit to it, that if I was showing up in a parade or at a dignified event, absolutely, that is not what I was driving. It just so happened that day, my morning supervisor had called in sick. I had to run early in the morning to open up and then do the county executive things all day, and then do our board meeting, and then run back and close the books. So it was a special day.
Thank you, Supervisor
Thank you.
Powers. Next speaker is Supervisor Shorsey, followed by Supervisor Eisen. Please go ahead, Supervisor Shorsey.
Okay. It's interesting that we've been messing around with staffing for your office. And we've never gotten on the right page, on the same page. We meaning Personnel and Finance Committee and you as executive. And, I think we're just trying on another name here, policy director. I think it's absolutely the wrong title. And as I looked at the duties associated with each, I think there's a lot of mixing. And there are some of us who have talked about hiring an administrator to run the county and, run the operations of the county. And I think this is just premature, and somehow you have to settle down and work with finance and personnel to come up with something that will work for everyone. And so I think that one policy director is definitely not the title for the person that I'm hearing you need. And then also the duties, I think, are construed. You as the executive, for instance, you are an elected official and responsible for government relations. You are responsible for working with the board of supervisors. There are some things that are very clear in terms of an executive role and then an operating administrator role. So I think we still have work to do. And I think we have to come to some kind of understanding and working together with personnel and finance and you to get you what you need to do the job. Recognizing that you also run a business, I think that's something that the voters have to decide. If that's part of who you are, then we have to figure out how to make that work. So I would just say to you, I would not be able to support adding this position now, but I would pledge that we should sit down and have some discussion. I think we have to take some people, again, as we've said from the beginning, off the table in terms of the discussion and just look at positions. So that I don't know if you want to respond to that or not, but I think this is premature. And the fact that the presentation you showed to the board has not come to the personnel committee is a problem for me as well, that we're kind of trying to preempt things to get it in the budget. And I'm concerned about that. So I think there might be an opportunity here to do something really good. But as it's presented, I could not support it.
This position did originally come to Personnel and Finance as a chief of staff. We had a hard time understanding what chief of staff meant. Some people were concerned with that. However, that motion died on the floor without a motion. So it never got the chance to come and be discussed in the county board. And then I went after a policy director for ARPA, looking for an MPA or an MBA to help us with a strategic plan and priority-based budgeting. Again, that was a 151-page packet that I supplied on that. I gave it to the entire board. Again, that failed on P&F with a lack of a motion. It died on the floor. I am trying. I'm not trying to force these things through. I don't think it's too fast. I think it's 30 years overdue. I think if we go back and read that Arthur Young report, that we would have been much better off had we had decided to follow the recommendations of Arthur Young back then. Had we given Paul Stevenson exactly what he asked for when he said, okay, we need to align ourselves like this to make ourselves more efficient. And now we're going to be coming up to times we're going to have to make some really hard policy decisions together. And we're going to have to look how we come together as departments and how do we regionalize? How do we work even with Outagamie County and Fond du Lac County and Calumet County? And how do we start combining our efforts, whether it be dispatch together, however it looks? We have a lot of tough choices ahead of us, and it is way more than one man in an office with an executive assistant can handle. If we want to do it right, we have to make sure that we're staffed correctly to do it. And any great CEO would tell you that.
And I agree with that. But the reality is we're quite a ways away from a lot of those kinds of visions. And first you have to do things right. And the problem with this situation is that it was not done right from the beginning. So somehow we have to retool and go back to the drawing board and work together to decide what's the best approach to get the support that is needed and then move forward in a way that we can all support. The way it's been happening though, it looks so chaotic to me, and it's not the way things are done. And I know that, you're coming in and it's difficult to do the entry, but I think it's been made more difficult by the way this has been handled. So I would encourage my colleagues to send us back to the table in terms of really getting down to, instead of fighting each other on these things, to get down and get to a point where we can work together and get something that'll work for you. And so you can move forward, do your job, and yet we can have the job done at the county level as well in terms of operations.
Thank you, Supervisor Shorsey. Next speaker is Supervisor Schellinger, followed by Supervisor Gabbert. Please go ahead, Supervisor Schellinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, so my first question, I'm going to switch gears here. I don't want to talk about the policy director. I'd like to talk about the communications intern position. So could you, I'm sorry if I missed this, who is that position going to be reporting to?
Reporting, well, mainly for me for operations, but I want them reporting to all department heads. I want them to be an asset for everybody. So working closely with Patty and IS to make sure that we're doing things right, working closely with our smaller departments that don't necessarily have a voice, Register of Deeds, County Clerk, and also working with the ones that do have a voice, say the Health Department or the Sheriff's Department, and how we combine that. How do we combine platforms to make sure that our voice is out there more so? And really looking for an opportunity of some college students, whether it be UWO or tech or wherever it is, to come in and get some experience with that.
Okay, so do you have communications experience and expertise in that would provide the type of internship, like the actual experience of an internship? Because it feels a little bit like we are hiring a position. We want somebody to do a professional full-time job, but we're calling it an internship. What would the county be giving to this intern that would be of value to them other than $15,000?
Well, I guess it depends on what it looks like. It was really more of an exploratory to see what do we need? What do we need in the county? How do we collaborate? What do we have out there? And then maybe it's something that we can look for as a project position eventually, and maybe that's in IS or IT, whatever it becomes. Like maybe that's somewhere else, but it needs to be available for all departments in the county so they all have an equal voice.
Okay. Who is currently managing the website?
IS.
Is that a full-time staff position is managing
5.
that? And you're suggesting moving that to an internship?
No, I'm not suggesting moving that. The website is something that we're gonna have to look at as well. It's simply to combine, it's to see what it looks like to combine. What does it look like if we combine our social media voices? Right now, we have the Parks Department getting ready to start up their own communication person. We have Solid Waste looking to do their own communications person. We have communications persons for the Sheriff's Department. We have communications for the Health Department. We're doing it with 6 people where we could do the county-wide with 3.
But so those departments that are already doing it, they're dedicating FTE that they have. And so my question is, are they hiring people with communications expertise, or are they throwing it on top of somebody else who has a different job?
I would hope that they are hiring people with community expertise. I know we have some great communication programs right here in WO. I mean, we have some great professors over there that are really teaching some good things that I think we could tap into.
Okay. So I think there's a real need to understand the communication gaps that the county has. I think that there's a real value to doing things the way some of the departments have. And I'll explain that a little bit. That, I believe the sheriff has an expertise in communicating about public safety. I believe the public health department has expertise in communicating about public health. And while there are certain communication threads and sort of ways to stack the combined effort together, a lot of the communications that are happening are somewhat specific to the departments. That said, I do see a need to tie this together, but I don't see that being congruent with what an internship can do. I also don't think that we are truly in a position to support an internship with the types of experiences that an intern would need, given that we are not set up with somebody who can guide and mentor and show some of these things, but instead are really putting a practical experience on someone's plate that should be, in my opinion, a full-time position. That is all my questions. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And obviously, originally, I did want it as a full-time position when I came to P&F at first.
Thank you, Supervisor Sellinger. Next speaker is Supervisor Gabbard, followed by Supervisor Eisen. Please go ahead, Supervisor Gabbard.
Thank you, Chairman Ramos. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you well.
So I'm going to stay on task here, but I'll reference some other departments as I'm doing this. It seems that the county overall has a tendency to add positions, sometimes during budget, sometimes right before budget, sometimes after budget. And we've spoke tonight about some positions available in facilities that we cannot find people to work at. I think possibly because the wage is too low. We have people at Parkview that, if you remember a few months ago, we had not nurses or LPNs or CNAs, but we had others out there that we brought forth as a committee to get some pay raises for them, or a one-time thank you very much for all you do. So we have aged and disabled people living at Parkview. We have people who clean every day, people who cook for them every day. They don't make a high wage. I would tend to take the side of those positions versus adding positions, whether it is in the county executive's office or another department. Let's take care of the people that we have in these positions and show that we appreciate them, and perhaps raise the hourly wage. As you all probably know, you can go work at Quick Trip for $15 an hour, Target for $17. Why would you come and work at the county for $13.88 an hour in facilities? That's ridiculous. I'd rather go work at Target. So here's my take on all of this. We sit here tonight and we'll sit tomorrow and Wednesday, and some positions are being added, some are being reorganized as a different title. I'm thinking we're losing the perspective of government, which we do this every day all over in the United States. We need to take care of the employees we have. Let's change what they're making. I'm not so sure that I'm all for this position at the county executive level. I think Executive Damel has been doing a really good job considering he walked into this job after the election, not knowing all the innuendos of what it takes to be county executive. I like the idea that we have a one-on-one with our county executive if we need to. I like the idea that the directors have a one-on-one with the county executive. I think that's very important. We have some very wonderful directors in all of the departments. And one-on-one to me is good. Let them do their directing of their departments. Let's not micromanage them. But I just think putting this much money into the county executive's budget is a bothersome thing to me. I think we could use that somewhere else. This is not derogatory to our executive. It's just me as a citizen, me as a county board supervisor. I truly believe this county needs to take a look at what we have going in our departments for our employees and look at giving them those job titles some increases, if you may call it, or raise the level of what the starting position is, especially in facilities and especially at Parkview. You trust these people to cook and to clean and to take care of our residents out there, but we don't pay them really enough to say, we care about you. So I'm not saying I'm not voting against this because it's part of the budget, but I'm just not saying that this is maybe the right thing to do at this point in time. I think the office runs smoothly. I think that no one has been turned down to have a direct communication. If you think you need a communications director, so be it. But I think the health department and the sheriff's department are good proofs of what can be done communication wise. Are we the best of the best? No. But is this county a good county? I think we do quite well. Just my opinion. And it's not against anyone, any idea here. It's just, I don't like this money being spent for something that I think we could do something else with. Thank you.
Chairman, can I respond to that?
Yes, please go ahead.
You know, one of the things of why I think it's gotten to the point it's been at Supervisor Gabbard is because the county executive has been trapped in that office with an overwhelming workload on day-to-day opportunities and day-to-day things that he hasn't had time to get out and talk to the workers. I've been doing that. I've been doing that right now to get out there with the help of the executive assistant that I have right now, to be able to get out there and find out what's going on at highway, to find out what's going on in facility, to find out what's going on in parks department, to see where we're working and how we can collaborate better. That's how we found out that there are log grapplers with facilities and parks that we didn't use while we were picking up the storm debris for highway. These are the things, if you really want to fight for those employees, then you have to fight for this office to be able to fight for them. That's what I'm asking you for.
Thank you, Supervisor Gabbard. Next speaker is Supervisor Eisen, followed by Supervisor Nussbaum. Please go ahead, Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to share with the county board my observation that I believe the county executive is bringing a fresh perspective to Winnebago County. I've been on the board since 2006, and I know how it has been working with the previous county executive. I'd like to elaborate on the comparison of the expense of the county executive's department. And I have found that even with the added position of policy director, which I support, the position, with that position, we still will spend 25% less than Outagamie County funds its county executive's office. The figure that the executive had for $305,000 was probably the 2021 budget, because the Outagamie County budget for their county executive is $335,259. We're getting more bang for the buck with our funding our county executives at the requested level. And I just throw in to boot that we spend probably 60% of what Outagamie County spends to fund their county board. So I'd like to elaborate a little bit more on what I have found in the county executive's attitude. And I'd like to refer you to page 76 in the budget book. It reads mission, and then it goes to program description. And then you see in 2022, the county executive wants to meet with department heads frequently. That's his attitude, is meet with them frequently. Now go back to the 2001 budget book and see what the previous county executive's attitude was. He wants to meet with department heads, quote, as necessary. Now, that's a completely different attitude. Our executive wants to meet frequently. Our previous executive wanted to meet as necessary. Now go down and see and read that our county executive wants to help maximize the collaboration with the public. This is also on page 76. And I'm going to get myself on that page because I'm reading this from my notes. And on page
While Supervisor Eisen is looking, it's page 78 he's referring to, not page 76.
Oh, here you go. It's actually on page 10. Great effort has been made to improve the efficiency of the county while preserving the valuable services of the county that the county provides. The total equalized tax rate, and it goes on to say, we will also be looking to collaborate with the private sector businesses and communities to fill programs that may no longer find in our mission. In essence, we have the ability to increase programs through partnerships. There's no shame in referring a citizen to someone else that can help. In the 2022 budget, the county executive wants to maximize collaboration with the public. In the 2021, the county executive wants to respond to general citizenry as required. And I would like to respectively disagree with the county supervisor from District 15. Because the state of Wisconsin statute 59.17 is clear. That is 59.17 parent 3. That statute gives the county executive the power, the authority to hire an administrative secretary who is not a civil service participant. And this ought to provide the county executive with the authority to go forward and to hire the policy director as he has asked for in his budget request. And with that, I will thank you for listening.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. Next speaker is Supervisor Nussbaum. Please go ahead, Supervisor Nussbaum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The voters of this county elected the county executive, and if we do not give him the tools that he feels that he needs to be successful, we are undermining him and doing the voters a great disservice. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Nussbaum. Next speaker is Supervisor Rasmussen. Please go ahead, Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A lot of things I could say here, but I'm just going to touch on a few for now on this. First of all, I find it ironic that the session started out by saying we have to tighten our belts, lower taxes, we're taxing everybody too much. Yet this part of the budget has a 52% increase. That's rather ironic. So many things were said in that speech we got, kind of a campaign speech. He was referred to as an office manager, and then a policy director, referred to as a lot of things. As was said, this has been going on for all summer long through PNF. Our committee has pretty much been united in our feelings on this stuff. This is about creating a position for a person. I'm not going to mention the person's name. We all know who that is. Brought him in on the second day of the job. Announced that he was the new chief of staff. We don't have a position for chief of staff. No approved budget transfer at that time. 3 weeks later at the PNF meeting, May 6th, presented his chief of staff proposal. Somewhere in there it was changed, the title was changed to transition director, and convinced a couple of the department heads to go along with that. Then it was changed to a project employee because he could just hire that without approval, but right in the policy, it says they have to have the budget. Well, he didn't have the budget for that. The committee tabled this for 2 months for the exec to show a plan and justification. What he came back with was what we all unanimously agreed on, was that was the job of the county executive. So it was denied again. Then sometime in July, the previous executive assistant retired, and now we created that job for this person. Hasn't really been doing that job. When I read the talking points of what the executive assistant is supposed to be doing, I don't believe any of that is being done right now. Seems our executive assistant is more acting like an assistant executive, bossing people around, thinking he's in charge of people, stepping over department heads, not following the chain of command, which is something important in something like this, especially those of us who were in the military know that. So there's a lot that's going on here. This is about trying to create a position for a person. I'm going to back up a little bit. I talked about bringing this person in as the executive assistant. Gave him a salary of the highest pay grade, the highest of the pay grade, the top of the scale. Nobody else in the county, maybe the HR director can tell me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe nobody else in the county has ever had that. We talked about that a little while ago on one of the other, somebody brought up, I believe it was Supervisor Binder brought that up, that bringing people in at higher rates, nobody comes in at the top. There's just a lot of stuff going on here all summer long that's been rather unethical as far as I'm concerned. And I think I speak for the committee because we all talked about this stuff at our meetings. You know, we pay the county exec $159,000 approximately in wages and benefits in a year. And he seems to think that this is a ceremonial position, you know, playing for the cameras, schmoozing the public, shaking hands, doing that kind of stuff, and wants to spend another $118,000 in wages and benefits for someone to actually do the job that I believe he's supposed to be doing, and not his other job. So whatever this policy, whatever this position is called, policy director, chief of staff, transition director, there's lots of names going around. I believe the county exec needs to do this job because he was elected to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Rasmussen. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll go ahead and conclude the county executive.
Can I
budget.
actually respond to that, Chairman Ramos?
Certainly, please go ahead.
I think it takes a lot of courage for you to sit here and talk to me about ethics right now, Rasmussen, Supervisor Rasmussen, and I think that's a bold move. I think I brought a really good proposal to PNF, and we are hung up talking about a person and not a position. I think this entire board had the opportunity, or at least you should have given them the opportunity to have the discussion on it. You could have made a motion and voted it down, and you didn't. Twice you did that, and you denied this entire board of 36. I could have went to any supervisor and asked them to bring it forward to the board. I did not, because I wanted to respect how we do it here in Winnebago. Supervisor Eisen is correct. I have the statutory authority to just bring on this position. I want to do it correctly through the board with your permission. I don't want to force it. Yes, I did try to change a couple things. I had the right to do the policy director as long as we got the budget transfer. I took the direction from our HR director, Mike Collard, and Corporation Counsel, Mary Ann, and they said we could do it as long as we get the budget transfer, which wasn't granted. Things changed. Now, I have been willing and trying to work with you the entire time. There are things that I absolutely could have done within my statutory authority to do. And the one thing that I appreciate that everybody keeps talking about is checks and balances, because we absolutely need checks and balances in government. That is what the county board is there to do, to be a check and balance to the county executive for policy and budget. But I am also a check and a balance to the county board. And this is something that has not been available in Winnebago County for a long time. Now that this is not me trying to come and tell you how we are going to run the county, but this is me asking you for the support so that we can actually run it together. Because your opening statement, when your budget is going to go up 54%, is exactly what is wrong with Winnebago County. It is our budget, and that we are balanced, that we are not adding any money to the TO for personnel. We are not adding any positions, because we are one county with a shared mission, with all our department heads working together. And until we get there, I will keep beating this drum. And the person that we don't want to talk about is very qualified, and he's worked for many forms of government for legislators, and he has more experience in county government than most of us. So I am done with that. I am not apologizing for that anymore, and I am definitely not going to come at you about ethical things. Thank you.
Thank you, Executive Dale. Seeing no other call-ins on the county executive's departmental budget, we'll go ahead and close that one. Now, we are a little past 8:30. Here's my thought. I think doing all four of them will probably get us a little later than maybe ideal. How about if we do the corporation council and the county clerks? And then we stop there tonight and we pick it up in the morning with finance. That basically would leave finance and county board that we'd start off tomorrow, but see if we can still get through corporation council and county clerk tonight. Does that seem reasonable? Okay, let's go ahead and do that. So we'll move on to the next budget. That's department budget number 11. That's the corporation council's budget. It starts on page 86. And so I'll call on Executive Damo. Any comments you want to give in regards to the corporation council's budget before we ask the corporation council herself?
Yeah, actually commend Mary Ann for this budget, realizing the need for the paralegal, for Autumn to become a paralegal and full-time. I think she's very qualified for that. But also there's a position that's kind of corporation counsel that's actually embedded in human services. And it's really a combination that we have to help with records finding when corporation counsel is getting court ordered for information. So I really respect her her desire to make sure that she is able to service constituents in court cases faster.
Thank you, Executive Damo. Corporation Counsel, Mary Ann Miller. Please
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
I just want to point out a couple of items to the board. You will see that in terms of the tax levy change, there is approximately a 10% increase. And that is based on, as the board may recall, we lost two of our longtime paralegals over the last year, one who passed away unexpectedly, the other who retired. So we lost approximately 45 years worth of experience. The 10% change, as County Executive Damo alluded to, is the fact that we hired on we had a part-time assistant who is now going to be going full-time, and she just got her paralegal degree. So we are very happy that she's with us. Actually, she's sitting right next to me tonight. The other thing I would like to point out to the board is if you look at page 93 in your budget book, under intergovernmental services, and it talks about cost share municipalities. If you go to the column, which was listing 2021, basically revised in terms of where things stood in terms of what we were going to anticipate for revenue, what we've actually received to date was $130,846 as opposed to $90,000. And that was based on our office handling a case of first impression before the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And as the board may know, we handle mental commitment cases from across the state because we have Winnebago Mental Health. And so if we have inmates from Waupun who are having crises, they are transferred to Winnebago, and we handle all of those cases. But if they are residents from a different county, we charge the county for the services we provide. So again, this is for 2021, but we had anticipated we were going to bring in about 90,000, but we've brought in 131,000 approximately, based on all the work that was done in regard to that Supreme Court case. We're anticipating next year, because we do not have currently any Supreme Court cases. We do have a number of appeals. We'll see where they go, but it will get more in line with what we're anticipating. Those are basically the points I wanted to make to the board, and I am happy to answer any of your questions.
Very good. Thank you, Corporation Counsel. We'll open it up for any questions. I see one calling. We'll call on Supervisor Binder. Please go ahead, Supervisor Binder.
Hi, Marianne. I know last year you wanted to stay in the Oregon King building. You thought it was basically necessary for your office. What changed, the change of heart that now we can go to the Oshkosh by Gosh building and everything will be all right? Are you feeling pressured that you need to give that space up, or did something change that now the Oshkosh by Gosh building is going to work for you? I just don't want to be remodeling buildings and having people switching, because last year we could have remodeled that Oregon King building and moved you over to the Oshkosh by Gosh building, and we wouldn't be having the cost coming up in 22.
I'd be happy to be forthright with you. As you know, that's what my motto is. We are going to do what is best for the county. County Executive Damel and I have talked. I will not mislead you. This would be a hardship if we have to move, but we have to do what is best for the county. So if my attorneys are going to court 2 or 3 times a day and they're going to have to be traveling back and forth, yes, it would be a hardship. But again, we have to look at what's best for the county. As County Executive Damel indicated, there are significant deaths. I believe in 2020, you indicated there were like 37 opioid related deaths. And he believes this is the best way to try to get a handle on this. And that's where we stand.
What I see is sad is we tore down that house that was right next door to the Oregon King building, and we could have remodeled that if we would have made this decision last year. We tore down that beautiful Williams house that was gorgeous on the inside, and it's just too bad we didn't make this decision last year. I realized we didn't have the 400 cases last year, but we tore down a perfectly good facility that we could have basically remodeled for the Connect program or for your office. And now we're basically going to put you in the by Gosh building and make you travel. It's just sad that we didn't see the foresight and basically do better for our taxpayers and not tear that house down, and we could have remodeled that and made that work.
Supervisor Binder, I have never been in that building, but I was told that that building was not in the best of shape, and actually could not be inhabited without significant money involved. But again, I wasn't in it. This is all secondhand knowledge.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, there was a little bit of damage to the soffit. For a few $100,000. I mean, we used the building until we didn't need it anymore. Then we shut it down. I mean, it would have been by far, we could have renovated that house for what it's going to cost to redo the Oshkosh by Gosh building for you. And you would have been on the location where you need to be by the courthouse. It's not your fault. I understand that. I'm just saying it's too bad we didn't have the foresight to see in the future.
Our office will make the best of the situation because we want what's best for the county.
Thank you, Supervisor Binder. Next speaker is Supervisor Powers, followed by Supervisor Schellinger. Please go ahead, Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Marianne, just remind me, court of first impression, that's one where there's not been any judicial precedent set. Isn't that correct? You mentioned
that's correct. It was a case of first impression. Yes.
Okay. And then how does dealing with a case of first impression, one that has not had any precedent set, how does that hamper your work, or how does that impact what you're doing?
Well, in addition to our regular work, which involves going to circuit court at least 2 or 3 times a day, 2 of our attorneys, we have to put a significant period of time to researching all of the various cases and case law and make an argument to the Supreme Court. Now, I will tell you that this case, the question was, it was a mental commitment case. And the question was, do you need to find new dangerous grounds to involuntarily medicate an inmate? And we had a number of different organizations filing amicus briefs, which are briefs that are friends of the court, that were either supporting our position or not supporting our position. So there was a significant amount of time spent researching, writing, redrafting. We actually reached out to the Attorney General's office, and they were kind enough to have us go down to Madison on 2 occasions so we could have a sample moot court to prepare for the actual oral argument. So it was a huge amount of time, a big drain. So that's basically what it involved.
Thanks. I just needed that clarified. I kind of thought it had to do with no precedent, but I wasn't sure how that impacted what the work was you did. So it probably has nothing really to do with the budget. I'm not really sure, but I appreciate your insight because I needed a little clarification on that.
The only way it affected the budget was because this inmate was from a different county. So all of this work that we did, and the bill was probably close to $50,000, was sent to Waushara County because this inmate was from Waushara County.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Supervisor Powers. Next speaker is Supervisor Schellinger. Please go ahead, Supervisor Schellinger.
Mr. Chairman. Okay, so thank you so much for putting the 2021 accomplishments in this book. I think that's a really nice format change that puts some numbers to what your department is doing. That's really helpful. So I think it's commendable for you to be so thoughtful about the whole picture and flexible with some of these changes. I am, I'm just asking these questions to kind of try to get an understanding of what your team is giving up in order to make this move. So, it looks like there's like 400 plus operations or, whatever you'd say that you are doing in a year. How many trips is that in a day or a week, if you could ballpark that between one building and the other? And I'm just kind of, I don't know if somebody goes and can stay there for 2 or 3 of, events at the court or not, but yeah.
Okay, so the numbers reflected on page 89 as in terms of the actual case types, and this doesn't include Supreme Court or Court of Appeals, is just for the first 6 months of the year, all right? So that, I think that's important to know. So, because it says for the first half of 2021, okay, on the second line, Winnebago County has reviewed the following types of cases. So that was only through June 30th. In terms of caseload, as you know, we have 6 branches in the circuit court, and each branch has intake for a couple of weeks, and it goes through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it continues on. Depending on the day, the attorneys in my office could go to the circuit court 2 to 3 times a day, maybe first thing in the morning at 8:30. There's often temporary physical custody hearings at 1:15. There are probable cause hearings at 3:30. So it's throughout the day. Now, there are days where we do not go to court, but most days we go to court. And before I became court counsel, I was essentially doing what my 2 assistants were doing. And I was in court regularly 3 times a day. I had a hearing where I anticipated it would be a half an hour, but you can never anticipate. As it turned out, it turned into a 6-hour hearing. So you never know where things are. If that's the case right now, we have another attorney who can cover. And if that attorney is in the middle of something, then I step in. So we all are basically trying to cover each other. But again, I want to reiterate, we have to do what is best for the county. And if it means moving, my staff we will accommodate and do what we have to do.
Thanks. Yeah, that is really a commendable attitude. It's really refreshing to hear. I want to make sure that your team has what they has what they need to make that transition. So, do you have an estimate about like how much time are people going to have to put moving between one building and the other now versus what they used to have? Is that, and then like, is that time just going to be absorbed into, into people working extra hours? So, I guess, could you address some things like that?
Well, fortunately, we're in Oshkosh, so there's not a lot of traffic. I mean, it's approximately a mile away. So, and we don't have to worry about a train coming because we're going from, east to west. And we don't have to worry about a bridge being raised because of a boat. So, I mean, I would say it would probably add maybe, I don't know, 5-8 minutes each way. So round trip, maybe say 15. We have parking at the courthouse, so we don't have to pay for parking. We can hopefully park on the street around the CAB building. So that's basically, and then obviously there's going to be mileage, but yeah, that's what I would run into.
Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you, Supervisor Schillinger. We have one more call in. Supervisor Eisen, you're next. Please go ahead, Supervisor Eisen.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been privy to the same information that all members of the county board have been in respect to the Corporation Council's explanation of their need, of her staff's need to access to the county courthouse. It is my opinion that it is imprudent to move the Corporation Council out of the Orrin King building. It's imprudent. I will not support that effort, and I will see what means and other support from other supervisors to take the necessary action in the budget to keep her in the Orrin King building.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. Next speaker is Supervisor Lautenschlager. Please go ahead, Supervisor Lautenschlager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was talked about earlier, Marianne. I think County Exec Daniel said, you could they could probably set you up in a satellite or a temporary office or whatever. What did you say, John, on the 5th floor of the courthouse? Would that help?
I'm sorry, Supervisor Lautenschlager, I didn't hear that question.
It was talked about earlier, and I think it was by County Exec Damo, that they could set you up in a temporary office or a satellite office on the 5th floor of the courthouse. Would that help your staff if you had some kind of a temporary office there, so you wouldn't have to run back and forth?
If it was available, it could help, but I want the whole office to be under one roof. I don't want to have satellite offices. We like to be cohesive. But I certainly thank the effort if in fact that could happen.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Lautenschlager. Next speaker, Supervisor Eisen. I apologize if I stopped you early. Please go ahead, Supervisor Eisen.
No, that's not me.
Okay, very good. Well, I see no other call-ins then, so we'll go ahead and conclude the Corporation Council budget. So we'll do one more budget this evening. We'll do the county clerk's budget, and then we'll stop for the evening, and then we'll plan to start tomorrow morning at 8:30 with finance, followed by the county board, and then the aviation like you see in the schedule for tomorrow. So one other budget, that's the county clerk's budget. It starts on page 99. And Executive Damo, any comments you'd like to make on the county clerk's budget before we go to Deputy Clerk Barthels?
Yeah, I would say that if anybody has noticed, Sue Ertmer looks a little weird today, and so we wish her a recovery. She isn't feeling well. But I would say that, you know, the biggest challenge for this one is we're coming into a year with 4 elections again. So it's there's a heavy cost that we have to cover, and I think the clerk's office did a really good job addressing that.
Thank you, Executive Damo. Deputy Clerk Bartels, anything else, or should we go ahead to see if there are any questions?
There. Executive Damo is correct. The increase in our budget this year is due to 2 extra elections. We'll have 4 elections in 2022.
Very good. Thank you, Deputy Clerk Bartels. We'll open it up for any questions on the County Clerk's office budget. Any questions? I see one hand. I'll call on Supervisor Schellinger. Please go ahead, Supervisor Schellinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a question about the other grantor agencies. I was curious if you could just talk a little bit about some of the grantor agencies and what programs or what do we do with those funds?
Okay. Can you help me out a little bit and tell me where you're finding that, please?
Yeah, I'm you know, it is one of the significant changes on page 102. And then it is I lost it here in the budget book. I'll find it one second.
Please, we'll have the Finance Director Fitzgerald. I think she can answer your question. Please go ahead, Director Fitzgerald.
Thank you. There was an election software that was purchased with a grant this last year, but it was a 3-year software maintenance agreement. And so we have to expense it throughout the 3 years. So it was just on our accounting side that we paid for it up front, but we have to show the expense on a yearly basis. But it was paid for by a grant.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Supervisor Schellinger. I see one other call, and I'll call on Supervisor Schneider. Please go ahead, Supervisor Schneider.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Julie, I noticed that we have a $100,731 increase in the levy for dog license, and I'm at a loss to figure out we could accrue that much of an increase. But why the big increase in data processing is line 55013 and other contracted services 55030 on page 112?
He's referring to page 112.
Yes.
I can tell you the increase in data processing would be for the, because of the 4 elections. That you'd have two extra elections that you're paying for them to you can't think of my word, to help us with the election. They do all of the processing. We send them the information and they help us with the ballots.
Okay. Yeah, that's feasible, but that brings me back to $100,731 increase in the levy for dog licenses. I can't have that.
If I may answer that, you're looking at page 77, Tom, is that correct?
Yeah, I believe so. Let me get back to it.
Because we found there was an error on page 77 where elections should be what dog licenses is and vice versa.
Okay.
Was that what you were referring to?
Yes.
Okay. So what you were looking at was really for elections, not dog license.
Yeah, you're right, Vicki, because on 114, on page 114, if you look under dog license, that is $4,400. Yeah.
Anything further, Supervisor Snyder?
No, nothing
Thank
for
you.
me.
Thank you, Supervisor Snyder. Next speaker is Supervisor Eisen. Please go ahead, Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I'll do a better job identifying the page for reference. I had said page 76 previously under the executives. It should have been page 78, but nonetheless, let me refer to the county clerk's page 110, elections. The line item is per diem, other per diem, and the object is 51107. And under this object, the county clerk requested $10,000 for the other per diem, and the county executive reduced it to 2,000. And my question is, what was this other per diem? Perhaps we're shortchanging elections oversight, and we wouldn't want to do that in Wisconsin.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. Go ahead, Finance Director Fitzgerald, answer your question.
Yes, I had talked to Sue about this because the question did come up from another supervisor. And last year, she, so to speak, over budgeted it because we were thinking with the presidential election that there would be a recall. There was definitely, potential for that not recall, excuse me, recount. And so that was over what a normal 2-year election would be. So in a normal 4-year election, it usually is around $2,000, so it is in line.
Okay, so you just made a friendly correction at the executive's column from what the clerk had previously requested. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Director Fitzgerald, and thank you, Supervisor Eisen, for the question. Seeing no other call-ins, that will conclude our county clerk's budget. So we'll stop there for the evening, and just so everyone's on the same page, we would plan on then reconvening tomorrow at 8:30, starting with the finance budget, followed by the County Board and Scholarship Program, and then go on to the airport like you see on the Tuesday agenda. So before we wrap it up for the evening, any questions on process from anyone? Just as a reminder to anyone that's considering an amendment, at any time you can reach out to finance now and begin working on it. The sooner the better. It just gives them more opportunity to get the information you need and be able to craft the verbiage that would be needed for any particular amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Please, Supervisor Wingren.
Thank you. I have a question on procedure, and based on the history of this board, I want to know who is going to be bringing the donuts in the morning and how are they going to be delivered?
It's a very good question, Supervisor Wingren. We'll have to postpone that answer till a later date.
I will anxiously await.
Thank you, Supervisor Wingren. Any other questions before we wrap it up for the evening? All right, very good. I'll then entertain a motion from Supervisor Albrecht for a motion to adjourn to tomorrow until at 8:30. Supervisor Albrecht?
I move we reconvene tomorrow morning at 8:30.
Second. There's a motion and a second for us to reconvene tomorrow at 8:30. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries. Very good. You all have a safe and wonderful rest of your evening, and we'll see you in the morning at 8:30. Thanks, everyone. Bye now.